first episode of the Two Truths podcast. I'm Dr. Jared Jones. As you already know, my research specialties are ancient systems of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, the philosophy of science, and a few other things. My guest today, my first guest on the Two Truths podcast, is Neil Ripski, who has an extraordinary resume of teachers and lineages and practices that he's done. And in particular, today, we're going to be talking quite a bit about one particular lineage, which he'll be telling you about very shortly. So please, Neil, introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me on, especially as your first guest. I began training in the mid 1980s, 86, when I was a kid in Chinese martial arts. And that's what led me towards all of the Qigong practices and meditative practices, because they were all sort of promised as a part of any kind of Chinese martial Shaolin thing. My whole career sort of started there in an external way and then started to move more and more towards the internal side. The younger version of me was really heavily bullied when I was in school. All of the older kids used to beat me up. I had big ears and a pot belly, and I was kind of skinny and didn't grow the same size as everybody else, and all that kind of stuff that got me picked on. So eventually I found an advertisement at the video arcade for a place that promised self-defense through the art of Kung Fu. And of course, that sold me instantly because I needed to learn to defend myself. And my very first class there was it was a JIng affiliate. And for some reason, by about halfway through the class, we had a break. And I very vividly remember turning around and being like, I found my thing. This is the thing. I don't know why that is, but it's the thing. I was a kid. I remember, saying I was going to be a fireman too. But somehow now it's been 40 years and it's still the thing. So I ended up training with the JIng for about 10 years. And then I became a teacher there at Sifu and moved into the city from the town I was living in growing up. And that's when I met Ma Qinglong, my Ma family Shaolin teacher, the master who taught me drunken boxing. And I had a real downturn in my life at that point, where I actually, just after I met him, I lost my apartment. I was going to be homeless.
Wow.
So I come to class, and I tell him, because I have to tell him I can't pay for classes anymore. Right? I'm out of here. I got things to do. And he just said, I have a spare bedroom. No big deal. You were a teacher at the JIng. Teach my kid class.
You never told me that.
Yeah, that's how I ended up moving in with him.
How long do you live with him?
I lived with him like 3.5, 4 years, something like that. So our agreement was he no longer taught his kids, because that's what I've been doing for like years at the JIng, right? So I took that rollover and I was living in his house. So I got a private lesson every day and I got to go to class. And his schedule at his club was 15 classes every week. So I just got to just accompany him all the time, an apprentice. We did that for a few years. And then Master Ma was in a car accident in the year 2000. Right. And that was the end of that. So my brothers and I had a meeting, my Kung Fu brothers. Yeah, my Kung Fu, but the other people that were training under Master Ma that had become disciples in the lineage. We all had a meeting, and I was the youngest of them all. I'm the baby of the whole group, right? I was the last disciple. And they were all like, having kids and being grown-ups and growing up and being adults, and I was not going to do that. So they all decided that I should take on the role of the teacher because that's what I wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Master Ma was gone. So I began looking for another teacher. And my karma got really good suddenly, because then I met Luangphor, who was a Thai Buddhist abbot of a monastery that ran a course in the city I was living in. Weirdly enough, when I asked him about it, he said as he got older, he hated the heat in Thailand. So he decided to start a temple in Canada where it'd be cold, so he could go whenever he wanted and get out of it. So to our benefit, fair enough. So I got to take his course. I did it once in 2000, and then I did his course a second time in 2004. It was a 6-month intensive, 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Wow.
Theravada forest course.
Yeah.
Meditation instructor course, he called it.
Yeah.
Which was really great.
And you did that course twice.
I didn't feel like I got it the first time around.
Yeah.
Totally honest with you. I did the course. It was like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I feel you. I feel you. I'm at the moment I'm wrapping up a 5-year course that's actually 6 years at Jamyang in London. And it's the same thing. I'm getting done with it, and I'm going, I've scratched the surface of a huge number of topics and trainings, and I need to do this like 6 more times probably to get it all. But carry on. So then, where do we go from here?
Yeah, so trained with Luangphor, um, and then I met Sifu Chen. That's my Lohan teacher.
Hmm.
I met him in like 2003, 2004. His daughter married a Canadian guy, so he and Simu moved to Canada following, right? So I get very lucky. One of my kung fu brothers, kind of funny, gets whooped in class, and I'll happily take the I whooped him. This is my fault. I whoop him, and he's kind of a big baby about it. So he goes to the doctor, right?
Oh
Goes to
no.
the Chinese doctor. And so Sifu Chen, he meets Sifu Chen before I do. He goes in there and, gets the pulse taken, looks at his tongue. And he said, Sifu looked at his arm and was like, "You're a Kung Fu guy, right?" Because like nobody else has the big bruises like morons that run into each other constantly.
Yeah, I've been there.
So that conversation gets breached. And Sifu Chen says, "Well, I teach a class on Shaolin Lohan Palm on Sundays. You should come."
Hmm.
So Daniel, anyway, Daniel leaves, gets outside. He calls me as soon as he leaves his appointment. He's like, "Neil, you got to meet this guy. Sunday, you are doing nothing. You're coming here." So I get the story. Think it's really interesting that he looked at his arm once and was like, "So, what kind of kung fu do you do?" So I ended up going down on the next Sunday and meeting him. And I was asked to do a demonstration because I had a school in town already. I was teaching.
Hmm.
And Sifu Chen watched me. He said, "Your outside kung fu is pretty good. Inside kung fu, it's not good." But he's
Nice.
like, "Fix it.
I fix.
I'll fix it. I'll fix it." And I was like, "Deal. You got yourself a deal." So I ended up training with him intensively when I still lived in that city for years. One of my kung fu brothers took over my school every week and tortured my guys while I went and spent time with Sifu Chen.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I got married and moved and things like that.
How long did you say you trained with him then?
So I trained with him from 2003 until he passed away in 2 years ago, 2023,
Oh,
2024.
oh wow, wow.
So I
Okay.
lived with him, lived in the same city with him for about half a decade, maybe a little
Hmm.
longer. And then I used to travel back and forth and bring him to my school to do workshops.
Hmm. From your experience, and I've shared mine on the channel a number of times, but from your experience, what is the point of Lineage, and what is it that you're getting from Lineage and that personal mentorship relationship with another human being that you don't get, for example, from watching even really detailed and excellent kinds of resources in terms of video or books or articles and so forth?
Lineage is the difference between describing an apple to someone or tasting one.
Hmm.
It's that lived experience that's happening right in front of you. The way when I was first breaching that subject with my teachers,
Hmm.
the word discipleship comes up. In the Kung Fu world, discipleship means like if you get accepted, you're going to be in the lineage now. If anybody asks who knows this thing, they're going to say your name. So you got to keep it together. You got to perform.
Hmm.
And when I asked, because of course I hear the word disciple in English, and I'm a bit of a pain, and I ask the hard questions to teachers. Well, what is it really like? What's it mean?
Hmm.
Because you didn't say the word Nihama disciple 1,000 years ago. What does it mean? And the actual best translation I ever got was allowed to touch the teacher.
Hmm.
A disciple is allowed to touch the teacher. You're allowed to be close to the teacher. You're allowed to feel what their kung fu's like. You're allowed to touch their mind with yours.
Hmm.
I mean, when I was training with Sifu, there was the Sunday afternoon class, Sifu Chen. And it was interesting because I was the only kung fu nerd there. Everybody else was a patient who he basically prescribed, "You're coming on Sunday." But then every night after I closed my school at 9, his medicine shop closed at 9. So I'd whip over and we'd hang out, do what we were going to do, and we'd go for soup. We'd go for congee in the middle of the night every night. And I think I learned more over soup than I did in his shop.
Yeah.
because you're in that experience with them. And even though we had language problems and his daughter had to help us all the time, it was obvious that that heart to heart thing changes things.
Yeah.
Because it's like me trying to teach a Chinese martial arts movement through a video. Anyone can mimic my body as it looks on a screen, but it's not the same as having somebody who's well trained ram their arm at you. There's
Yeah.
an experience, a taste, a flavor you can't replicate any other way. So I think lineage is the people who've always been allowed to touch the teacher in
Mm.
succession all the way back to the best teachers.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about the noodle shop, uh, because I've said on sort of my mini bio, you could say I've said to a number of people that most of what I learned about Dharma, I learned over a cup of coffee at Starbucks or at Waffle House or at my teacher's house with little nibbles there or whatever. Most of this actually came from just being around this person and seeing what their demeanor was like and seeing how they answered questions and sometimes the unexpected way in which they brought information together or connected different parts of the practice. And having, as I sometimes say, if you have the book or the video, even if the instructions are perfect, it's a bit like having a map, but you've never been there. And so you wouldn't, for example, get a map of Mount Everest and an extremely good, perfect guidebook and then do a personal workout and try to climb Mount Everest. You would die. You need somebody that can kind of hold your hand, as we were talking about the other day.
Yeah,
we
you
can
need
talk. We can
somebody to
tell that
hold your
story
hand
if you like.
sometimes.
Yeah, you need
Yeah,
someone to
sure.
kind of go, okay, this part in the guidebook here where it says don't turn left, this is the actual spot where you don't turn left. And that kind of conversations happens often over a cup of coffee with your teacher that you're close enough to touch, and doesn't happen in the general discussion hall or the general training hall or the general teaching hall. So yeah, I agree with you
I agree.
100%. There's
I,
a really
I
sort
think
of
people,
human mentorship
yeah,
element.
it
Yeah,
has to
go
be
ahead.
there, right?
Yeah,
It's like books books are like getting a map. I 100% agree. But the problem
yeah,
is the map is never the terrain. And
that's right.
because of that, I think where the problem lies is that people are trying to navigate with maps instead of compasses.
Hmm.
Teachers are compasses.
Hmm.
They're the ones who go north is over there, stupid. Yes, there's a mountain coming. Over there, stupid. Right? Because that's the lived experience of the compass keeps you alive on that, imaginary terrain you don't know yet.
Yeah,
Without lineage, without a compass, yeah. I've been to Mount Everest. You'll die.
yeah.
Guaranteed
Oh,
you'll
you've
die
actually
up there.
you've actually been? I haven't been.
When I lived in Nepal, I did a
Yeah.
motorcycle trek from Kathmandu, 2.5 days up to the base camp of Mount Everest, up to the
When were you
last
in
tea house where you have to start walking. Yeah,
when were you living in Nepal?
it was a year and a half after the earthquake, 2019, something. No, not 19,
What were you doing
14,
there?
whenever the earthquake was. Yeah. What was I doing? Well, I was doing what a young Buddhist martial arts guy does in Nepal. Goes and gets himself in trouble. I uh I took a group of teenagers with me. I took
Yeah.
all of my highest level students from my martial arts school, and we went to Nepal and I did a volunteer workshop. So I did a workshop for all of the martial artists in Nepal for however long it was, 2 weeks. And we
Hmm.
did a cultural exchange program where I taught their teachers my teaching methods.
Hmm.
And then in exchange, like we got to go on motorcycle trips and hang around in Nepal for half a year. So I spent a lot of that time going out into the mountains or going to temples to try to talk to people. I got permission to stay at a couple of the temples there, which hopefully I'll get to in the future. We'll see.
Before this conversation, before we went live on this conversation, we were talking about over the last few days the fact that you do have, as people can read in the description, you have this sort of incredible martial arts resume. But as you get into your later years, you have this desire to pass on, in particular, your Lohan system for reasons that I'd like you to describe rather than me, and that you'd actually like to pass on, in particular, the meditative aspects of the systems that you've learned as well. Let's talk about sort of For those who don't know, including myself, because I'm not an expert, can you just describe, if we were to sort of say, here's all the moving parts of Lohan? Here's all the different sort of
Yeah,
elements
sure.
and the categories we could fit them into. And then when we get to those places where, for example, this piece here is missing from a lot of other meditative systems that you might get in, say, like a modern mindfulness context, that sort of thing, that we highlight those elements.
Well, in broad strokes, as a first overview, the idea in Lohan is that it's a physical system that is meant to be supported for meditation. It's not a martial art. I mean, it has a martial art aspect, but it's the smallest part of it. It's only because of its Shaolin origins, I think. But it's meant to be a body support system. So your body will begin to do the transformation through physical movement. The same transformation that will happen when you do meditation. So if you will, there's an outside to the inside practice and an inside to the outside practice that's trying to do both to get things to work. So the Lohan system has only one set standing form, if you will, 18 moves long, one for each of the Lohans.
For the sake of the audience and stupid people like me, could you tell us what a Lohan is?
Oh, yeah. So why don't you tell? I'd like to hear actually your version of that definition.
No.
So a Lohan is somebody who has broken from samsara, but they're still alive. They're still here. They haven't passed on past their body yet. So they've pulled it off. They're realized people, actual like real human beings, enlightened but still here, in sort of broad strokes. So a Lohan is anybody who's accomplished that. I mean, it's the 18 Lohan is like a famous thing, but it's not just that there's 18. There's numerous thousands, I'm hoping more than that, in the world, because it just means that somebody's become the thing that the process is trying to create. So the way I see it is that what Lohan's doing is it's trying to cultivate the process on Sifu Chen's model in three aspects. So he talked about there being three basins, like three bowls in a fountain suspended above one another. And if you were to pour water in the top bowl, it would overflow into the middle, which would overflow into the bottom. But because there's no gravity in our hypothetical, it also goes the other way. It'll flow upwards either way. So the way he described it was JIng, the lowest bowl, is like your physicality. So when you're doing an 18 Lohan form, which is like a moving yoga, if you've never seen that kind of thing, it's like a moving yoga form. Then what you're doing is you're working on the JIng part. You're working on your physical being, the substrate of what you are, the animal body you inhabit. And you're trying to make it start to transform into something healthier, that'll live longer, that's more useful to humanity, if you will. And the middle basin is the chi or energetic basin. So then you start having like qigong exercises where that starts to cross over to meditation and things like that.
Right.
Breath, retentions, etc., right? So that bowl begins to fill. The Shen bowl at the top is the mind. That's like reading classics and learning things, starting to rest in your awareness, realize your awareness and your mind are different things. So the way he put it was, you're in a race against your lifespan. And then a person who becomes a Lohan has all three full. But you could fill them by just pouring into one of them. But it would sure take a long time for it to trickle all the way down or all the way up. So what happens when a martial artist practices for decades and decades and decades? Suddenly they appear really healthy compared to their peers. Because the JIng bowl is really full. It doesn't mean they're smart yet. Doesn't mean their Shen is filled up yet. I've met a lot of people that have a really powerful body with not super fantastic minds happening. That's the way it is. It's reality we live in, right?
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
an example, like when I'm teaching about this in class, the example I actually use is Arnold Schwarzenegger. So if Arnold Schwarzenegger became the ridiculous body he became through all of that Jing Gong, through all of that physical work, then you can also look at him and you can say, how did he write that encyclopedia of bodybuilding? Because his body informed his knowledge base. And then he started powering up his knowledge base to understand how to do better things with his form. He became extremely healthy and vital. Had the, could drop people off cliffs and all those things that he could do. So he had a lot of energy. It seems to me like he was starting to fill the basins, but from only one aspect. If you lift enough heavy things, you start researching how to do better lifting of heavy things. The Shen will it will engage eventually. So kind of the magic of the Lohan systems is trying to fill all three on purpose.
Okay.
Some of the practices are JIng, some of them are Qi, and some of them are meant for Shen.
So just for the uninitiated in the audience, so to speak, roughly speaking, JIng is sort of the physical aspect. Qi is sort of the, let's say, the coarser energetic aspect, but it can also be quite subtle. And then Shen is the mind or the mental aspect, and even subtler types of sort of energetic components that come along with the mind, right?
Yeah.
So just for those who are sort of following along but not quite sure what the hell we're talking about, roughly speaking, we're talking about the body, the sort of energetic system, and the mind, which also has very subtle energetic components from the standpoint of Buddhist Tantra, and also from the point of view of Daoist stuff, and I think also from what you're saying here, from the point of view of the Shaolin.
Seems that way. I think those things are shared amongst all those traditions.
Yeah.
So it's always balance.
Mm.
I think the problem that everybody's missing is balance. I've met really accomplished meditators who can't walk up a flight of stairs without getting huffing and puffing because their bodies are deteriorating. Their minds are ultra sharp, but the vehicle's starting to deteriorate. Not balanced then. Something ain't right about that. And then the same thing, I've met really powerful practitioners who have very powerful energy and very powerful bodies, but some of them are still dickheads. So their ethics aren't even under control.
I was talking about this right before we got on live, that it is actually, like, some Buddhists don't like it when you say this, but it is actually possible to develop pretty powerful mind without the ethical component and sort of go down the Darth Vader route rather than the Luke Skywalker route.
One of my teachers called that a poison dragon.
Wow.
Is somebody who's accomplished spiritual power without ethics.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst kind of, because it means
the worst outcome. Yeah.
Right. It's the wizard, right? Yeah. Bad news. But I mean, as far as what people are missing, it seems to me that that's always the case. There's always some kind of thing that's lacking when you're in the laity. But that's why if you attach into a lineage, the idea of the lineage is that they're holding it together. Right? If you would get into a lineage that is transmitted throughout time through these people, you can rely on the fact that whatever attainments they've made, they have the stuff that makes that happen. So if I meet Sifu Chen is my Yoda. He was the most beautiful human being. Like, he really was, right? And he would always tell me, just remember to be more Buddhist. That's it. Whatever you want to do, it's definitely not Buddha's right mind. So you're a twit. So what can you do that's more Buddhist than your instincts? I have to think about that, right? All the time. So if I think if people have that example, they have somebody who's reining it in, they have a good, true example of what's going on, then they make the attainments of the example. But you can read a book from a great master, but you're a twit. So it doesn't matter. You don't have access to them to swat you when you need it. Why do you think Zen guys would hit people with sticks? I get it. Right?
Yeah.
It's just how it is. So I think that what's missing is that people don't get into lineages that are holding things together. Because every real lineage that I've been lucky enough, privileged enough to get exposed to is still interconnected to other lineages because they cross in form, but they don't do it at the beginning. They do it once you're inside.
May I jump in there? Because this is something that people ask me about a lot, and I've seen a lot. They say, well, can I mix this with this, or can I have these three things? And it's sort of like, yeah, but don't do that now. You know,
exactly.
What I tell people all the time is, if you want to gain accomplishment, marinate yourself in one system for long enough to become really competent in all of the elements of that system. How you do the seated practice, how you understand all the moving parts of the practice, blah, 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 blah. And then, having done that, you can start adding on new stuff and bringing in more pieces from other places that might make what you're doing in your lineage work even better. But the first, you need that foundation to sort of, as you said, you have sort of a or similar to what you said, all of the moving parts of one system that actually has been proven through the course of history to bring people to these kinds of accomplishments. That you have the actual sort of, you have enough of that system to sort of go, okay, I can see my way through now. And now, having been able to see my way through, what about this piece? Is my lineage for my predisposition actually helping me accomplish this aspect? Well, what if this lineage has a little bit more in this part that somehow works better from my predisposition? Great. And I tell people that sort of thing all the time. So I'm really glad to hear you say it also, because I have the same opinion. You know, part of the reason that I'm able to take in so many different things from so many different places is because I marinated in the Geluk lineage pretty hardcore for like 15, 18 years before I started trying to marinate in other things. You know?
Yeah, when you have a really powerful frame of reference,
Mm.
other things, you have a lens on it, is what it seems like. You gain your set of glasses that now when you see another lineage do something and they say different things in a different language with different poetry, you can still go, wait a sec, do you mean this? And it breaks through huge amounts of it because you spent 20 years trying to understand it one way already. So yeah, I think everything begins to converge, but you not at the beginning, because it's like climbing a mountain. Everybody's climbing from a different perspective, a different pathway up that pathway of the mountain. But as the mountain grows smaller, they'll start to interlink and connect.
Mm.
And to me, that seems like you start to see, hey, we're both headed up. Can I just grab your thing and go left with you for a sec?
Yeah.
Like that seems like it'll be quicker. And not to belabor the metaphor, but I think what also happens in the laity, especially without a relationship with a teacher, is you get to some place on your mountain and there's this super cool view. You're like up above the mountain, above the valley, and you could build a cool dojo there if you wanted. And there's all these people struggling to get up. So you turn around and you go, man, I'm the master. I'm going to help you.
Right.
Forgetting that there's a cloud covered top. But to go up to the cloud covered top of a mountain, you have to leave your dojo and walk back up alone into somewhere you don't understand. It's way easier if your master is walking ahead of you and he has you by the hand.
Yeah.
You're not doing that with a book, I don't think. It would be very hard with a book anyway.
No, and that's another thing that I try to highlight with people that ask me for advice on these sorts of things, is that part of what happens in a lineage. There's this wonderful analogy I heard once, and it was a novice monk, and he had kitchen duties, and he was washing potatoes. The abbot, I think it was, came in and was watching him wash the potatoes, and he was taking each potato, big old pile, because they're feeding the whole monastery, and he's washing them one at a time. And the abbot doesn't say anything and watches for a while, and then just walks over and sort of takes a whole bunch of the potatoes and puts them in a bucket. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Abbott pours water in and goes like this and shakes it. And all the potatoes bump into each other and wash each other off. And then he looks at this new student and he goes, "That's the Sangha." If you try to wash yourself alone, it takes a long time. But when you're there with a whole bunch of other people bumping into each other, you get to see all their mistakes, you get to see all their successes, and the teacher also, who's maybe the thing shaking the whole shaking the whole bucket, is helping you to ensure that you're headed the right way, and that any experiences that you're having that aren't the path, they're just some nice interesting thing that happens, you don't get distracted and fall off a cliff by these experiences, which is actually the big danger. If you get a little capability, weird stuff starts to happen, and you'll think it's all really important, and most of it isn't. Or it's a good sign you're headed the right way, but if you fixate on it, you've just fallen off the path. So lineage really helps you to not fall into those kinds of problems. On that note, here's sort of a big question, and I think I have an answer to this, and I've expressed it many times, but is it really possible for people living in the real world to make significant progress with this stuff? Or are we just sort of fooling ourselves and we should all move to a cave or become monks or nuns?
Good question. It's the burning question.
Mm,
It's the burning question, I think, for everybody who's serious about this.
yeah.
From my experience in the last 40 years I've been messing around in this world, I've met really accomplished practitioners that are not monks. That are, I mean, Sifu Chen himself wasn't a monk. He happened to have trained with one. He trained with a lama, right? But
A
he
Tibetan Lama?
himself was a doctor. Yeah. And he himself was a doctor and had kids, had a life, all that kind of stuff. But he was definitely more accomplished of a human being than most of the humans I've met.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that in many ways. I've seen people with utterly pure ethics from the practice. I've seen people with like monstrous martial power from their energetic practice.
Hmm.
So, and they're all lay people. I
Hmm.
think it comes down to the fact that it's just like filling a vessel, one drop at a time. Every time you sit and meditate, another drop goes in, and eventually it will fill. I think it comes down to just some dedication and mainly consistency. The saying in the kung fu world is if you ignore your kung fu for one day, it'll ignore you for two. Meditation seems to follow that same rule.
Hmm.
So it's absolutely possible.
I mean, that's basically the same position that I come to. But then the question becomes, how do you make it possible in the midst of children, career, hobbies, also becoming exhausted because of your ordinary activities and having limited time to do your other types of training? How do you actually manage all of this stuff so that over the course of, let's call it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and so forth, you've actually you're on a track that's taking you towards greater accomplishment and not just sort of fooling yourself or how to say. I mean, just by way of example, because I know you're ready to get into it, but like just by way of example, one of my first students, um, one of my first students said to me when I started teaching her the meditation techniques that I teach. She said after about 6 months into the process that she had been training in modern mindfulness and vipassana techniques for 30 years and made more progress in
Yeah.
6 months with my techniques than she had in the previous 30 years. And I went, this is exactly why I'm doing this. Because I think what you need as a layperson who's not in retreat 24/7 is perhaps different than someone who's living in retreat or living in isolation. And so that if you could perhaps let that sort of flavor the answer you might give to the question, if you know what I mean.
That's two questions, sort of, isn't it?
It is.
Um, I mean, I think that a layperson with constant, like consistent practice will accomplish things. I think that if they have a lineage and a teacher near them that they can talk to and ask questions, and even because now we can talk to each other on the phone and things like this,
Yeah.
that will help things a lot, a lot, a lot. However, there is certainly an argument about quality versus quantity.
Mm.
There's 1,000 hours of really crappy meditation is sitting around in your ass. That's whatever, right? That's easy. So I think that the purity of the teachings is what people need to look for.
Mm.
Again, lineage is looking into the past because there's famous names. And they're famous because they did it. It worked. It's that simple. That's why you know years and years and millennia later that somebody named Atisha existed. Like, that's not yesterday. So something really crazy happened there. He really accomplished something.
Yeah, amongst the 40,000 people who could have been named, he's the one we remember.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So what's going on? It just points to this particular method. It works.
Yeah.
It has to do with the quality of the practitioner. But you have to have a good method and a good practitioner for the sauce to mix, right?
I see.
Otherwise, it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
So tell me more about that as a layperson.
So, as a layperson, when I'm looking for people to talk to and
Mm.
I have questions, I'm always looking for people with more experience in direct lineage than I have. Because I could whip on YouTube and ask the first yoga teacher I see and see what that half my age, training for 10 years person has to say. But the chances are the insight won't be the same as if I talk to somebody twice my age who's therefore 100 and a Taoist immortal, right? And have something else to say.
Like Ian.
Right. I knew he was older than he said. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's both, right? You have to find a
Yeah.
lineage that you resonate with and that has a history behind it.
Mm.
That's important. And if you can't find those things, then you're kind of on your own, which is no fun. So you have to really search for
Mm.
somebody that matches that bill, a lineage that fits your bill and is a real lineage that's doing something. And then you need consistent practice. But
Okay.
yeah,
So on that point, so then again, I agree with you. I think what's missing, the sort of in terms of the special sauce, as you said, for a lot of modern practitioners is, I don't like some of my colleagues, for example, think that meditation apps are bad, or that as you said, that the sort of people that are teaching casual meditation, let's say through yoga centers and stuff, that is bad, or it should go away. But what I think is it's not leading to the same place as what these systems are saying, because it doesn't have the richness and the detail and the sort of depth and breadth of information you would need to go all the way. And as someone who studied, part of my master's work, I probably don't think I've told you this, but was to look at virtually everything that's been done in the cognitive science of meditation since about 1960 up until 2020. Was reading a lot of that research. And from what I could see, no one, for example, in the modern mindfulness movement, and they've done a lot of experimentation on secular mindfulness practices, no one has accomplished in those systems what they see Tibetan yogis who have spent significant times training in a full on system. The results that they're getting in terms of what we can see in their brain are not how do I say, not even sort of not similar, but they're in two completely different classes of cognitive capability. They're not even close. One is like the far end of a bell curve for a normal person, and the other one is a completely different bell curve that's like way out over here somewhere for accomplished
yeah.
yogis, right? so um, so there's that aspect. But then the other aspect, as you said, of the special sauce is the person. And this is something that I hit on quite a bit too, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are the personal qualities you think a person needs to bring to be successful training if they've found a good lineage.
I think that I think the greatest watchword, and this is like at least from my personal experience, the greatest watchword in my life is the word authenticity.
Mm,
So they have to be authentically practicing. And authentic practices mean you're doing it as best you can all the time. If you decided you meditate every day, you might fall off the wagon, but you just get back on tomorrow because you do the best you can all the time. And when you act like a quit to one of your friends, you acknowledge it after the fact and go, I'm going to try not to be that much of a dick tomorrow because I'm
right.
going to clean my ethics up. And the authentic try makes it happen. Reading the book and being able to list the fetters means nothing if you don't do anything. Who cares? Right? You have to have some kind of authenticity brought to the practice, which is
Mm,
why teachers matter. Because an accomplished practitioner has authenticity in their practice. It reminds me of one of my favorite sayings I heard. You cannot understand emptiness until someone talks to you who actually understands emptiness.
mm,
It was very much my experience that I had read many, many books about what emptiness meant. And Sifu Chen and I had noodles one night. And I walked away in a daze. Like, the world's not the same now. I'm
yeah.
not the same now. And how could he have just said the same things I've read,
Yeah.
but it's not the same now?
It's not
Because
the same.
he
Yeah.
did understand, right? And that mind to mind transmission is a part of the whole deal.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually glad you brought that up because again, this was my experience as well. Like I've always from the beginning, um, I read somewhere right in the early stages that the smart people they study the emptiness part and that's what they like. And as a person who wants to be a smart person, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go the smart person way. So I right from the beginning, I was like, the compassion part that's important, but this emptiness thing, that's apparently where the real bodhisattvas go. They go to the emptiness, so that's where I'm going. And so, for years, I was interested in the emptiness aspect of all of this stuff, and I thought I kind of got it. And then I asked my teacher, I said, I'd really, can we study Lama Tsongkhapa's Ocean of Reasoning and try to, can you actually teach me this subject? And at first he sort of said no. And then he said yes, sort of reluctantly. And then we started studying the text, and it took us, I don't know how long, like 3 or 4 years or something, to just go through the first chapter. And then he didn't even finish the book. We moved on to a different book because he said I wouldn't believe him if he told me who told him that we needed to switch books and do a different subject now, but that it was really important. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yes, of course, no problem.
Yes,
But
sir.
in any case, it was the same experience where, like, even when I started having some genuine understanding of this subject of emptiness and selflessness, I had to go to my teacher and be like, okay, this sort of thing has been happening now for 2 or 3 weeks. Am I full of shit, or is this the real thing? Because it feels genuine. Sort of like, it's extremely important that this happened, but don't make a big deal out of it. Carry on doing the stuff, or it won't happen again for a long time. And then, of course, I did a bunch of stupid shit, and it didn't happen again for like 4 years.
Yep.
As you do when you follow your teacher's advice. Yeah, as you do.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I told you that 5 years ago. Glad you came back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, glad. Good to see you again. So what do you so along those lines, what do you think then are the big challenges that we face in actually making progress that are unique to the struggle we have in the real world versus the struggle you would have if you were in isolation?
The real world's really noisy.
Yeah.
And constantly challenging all of the time. When you have a really nice meditation session, everybody who's done it, there's that spot where you're not worried about anything, you're not anxious about anything, you're not mad about anything. There's no emotions, everything's kind of clear and cool and easy going. The spot that when you open your eyes at the end of meditation, you're like, I'm gonna be like that all day. And then you're a dick 10 minutes later. That spot.
Yeah, then your wife comes in and is like, hey, did you do that thing I asked? And you're like,
exactly. What do you mean the coffee's not done? Yeah, it's exactly what happens, right? Meditated over time again, that kind of thing.
So you're saying marriage is the biggest challenge?
That's right. So there's this one big problem. No.
We're gonna get in so much trouble for this.
You're gonna edit this piece.
Yeah, we'll edit this out.
Yeah.
No, joking aside, my teacher actually said, like, straight up, he said your marriage is actually like part of the crucible of your practice as a layperson, because there's almost no one on the planet who understands how to get under your skin like your spouse. And so your ability to manifest the results of your ability to manifest the results of your practice in the midst of the difficulties you have with marriage is actually a really good acid test for whether or not those realizations are genuine or not. So, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
100%.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the big problems in the real world. You're trying to be cool, calm, and collected and go with the flow, but there's so much stimulus. So practitioners will disappear and sequester themselves, remove all the stimulus, all the noisy crap, so they can just do the thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is stillness, we'll say. Stillness inside chaos is much harder than stillness like with birds chirping and butterflies. Yeah. So doing it in the real world, I think, is incredibly much more difficult, but more stable. Because I have a suspicion, if I went back to Nepal and I hung out a really long time in a cave with some really cool guys, I'd get super smart, and then I'd walk back into Kathmandu and turn into myself.
Yeah.
Because the noise would hit me. And I think that's the problem, is that then I realize that I'm not authentically stable in my practice. So doing the practice in the real world, I think, is actually more powerful in a way. It's wearing the sandpaper suit to grind your edges off.
Wait, tell me more about that analogy. I've never heard that.
So if I'm really trying to attain stillness, relaxed, emptiness, all the things I want in meditation, but the bus goes by, it kind of grates on me. like these sandpaper across my head. And when somebody acts a way that I find offensive, it kind of hits me in the heart and it kind of grates on me. So the way I see it is samsara is sandpaper suit.
Hmm.
You chose to take on this body, you put on the sandpaper suit, so you're going to reap that. Now, if you can want, that sandpaper can grind you into dust, or it can start to let you transform into something else.
Hmm.
So if I start to practice from the inside of my sandpaper suit analogy, it means that I actually acknowledge the fact that things are hard. And I authentically try to do my practice while things are hard
Hmm.
all the time.
Hmm.
I'm always cleaning my ethics up. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to be a better person. I'm always trying to
In the
manifest my
midst of things
sitting
that are
practice in
challenging
my
the
life
ethics.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
In real time.
Right.
Exactly. In real time. Because
Yeah.
without that, it's not stable in real life.
Hmm. No,
One wonderful meditation is great, but I mean, who cares if you're not changed as a person?
yeah, 100. I mean, this is something I hit on quite often as well, which is this aspect of how to say. There's a lot of people who go on retreat, and not that retreat is bad or that it's fake or something. That's not what I'm saying, to be clear. But a lot of people will go to a retreat, sometimes long retreat, relatively speaking, for a normal person, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and they come back, and within a year, they're not exactly where they were, but they're pretty close to being back to where they were. And so you put in a year, you put in a month, and you spent all that time and money and effort and everything. And maybe it's definitely good karma and what have you. But if you don't have techniques that allow you to bring the results of that retreat back into your activity, then you lose precipitously. You lose the benefit. So one of my focuses, as you know, is trying to teach people how to take more of the activities from the cushion into their actual life, because that's where the training is going on. The practice is happening on the cushion. The training is happening in real life, right?
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. There has to be the bridging of
Mm.
practicing into real life. Otherwise, the practice it's not stable. It's
Yeah.
just not stable yet.
You're just waiting for the circumstances to be too demanding for the practice, for whatever you've practiced, to fail in application. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you would like to share, for example, with because we wanted to sort of cover some Lohan stuff on the
Mhm.
Lohan side? Is there anything else you'd like to share about that before we move to open questions?
I guess I haven't talked that much about it. The most interesting thing I find in the Lohan system is the fact that it seems to cover all of the different postures of practice. There's seated meditation practices, energetic practices, moving practices like standing up and moving, seated practices, laying down practices. And when you read the classics, it's lining up with what's supposed to be there in a lineage.
Mm.
And I think that's, like we were talking about, really important because I think any accomplishment I've made in my life has to do with the fact that getting all of the practices from a lineage is like being given a medicine cabinet. And you're able to go, oh, look, I'm sick. I need one
Mm.
of those.
Right. I
But
need this
until I have
piece.
my own medicine cabinet, I need to go to my master and go, hey, dude, I'm obviously sick. Got any medicine? And he said, yeah, you got to sit and breathe like this now. I
Mm.
think that's what passing lineage on means is you have the med cabinet now. So you should be able to keep yourself together. And eventually you'll be able to dispense medicine.
Mm. That's a great analogy. That's a fantastic analogy. It's funny because in the last couple of days, talking to people on the phone, I've used that a very similar analogy where it's like, well, they're like, well, how do I use all this stuff you're teaching? I'm like, well, eventually you just sort of, it's like you have a bag of tools in your tool belt, and when you reach the point where you need to turn a screw, you just pull out that tool, and you're like, okay, here we go. I know how to turn screws, perfect. And when you need the wrench, you pull out the wrench, and you're like, all right, we'll fix this piece now, bang. And so you start having different stuff you can apply at different times based upon what's actually going on. And yeah, that this comes through having a complete lineage that has a full tool belt of stuff. And then maybe at some point you
Exactly.
grab a tool from somewhere else where you go, oh, I didn't know there was a tool for that. Great,
Okay.
bang. you know?
Mm,
Um,
exactly. Not to belabor the point, but if
yeah.
all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, then everything is a nail. Yeah.
And lots of people without lineage, that's what their practices look like.
Yeah, they think, oh, well, all you do is just sitting.
Do
And
it
that's all
harder.
they're and yeah, and
Yeah.
if it's not working, you just need to be sitting more.
Mhm.
Okay. That's not what
Yeah,
Dogen
exactly.
said, but okay.
What about the guy
You
that
know,
slept all the time? What are you talking about? Yeah,
well, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, like Dogen actually makes fun of people that make that argument in the Shobogenzo. He makes fun of them for saying that. Anyways, okay. We digress. We digress. Okay. Friends, colleagues, comrades, there is about 19 of you in the room. And there are already some questions that came in, so I'm going to take them in order,
Uh-oh.
except as per the usual, dear friends and colleagues. Since I do everything, this channel only exists due to the generosity and donations of the people that are members and the people that are sending super chats and people that are sending donations. I do everything for free, I teach everything for free. And therefore, to do all of this, we owe something to those who donate and support the channel. And so, one way that I reward those people who are donating to make it all possible for everyone else to have it for free is I answer their questions first. So, if you send through a super chat, I will do those out of order. Otherwise, I'm going to do whatever questions we have in the chat in the order of the chat. Okay? Also, if you're one of the higher tiers of member for the channel, same thing. Since you're supporting the channel and making all this possible, likewise, it'll list it there by the membership tier. If you're at that tier of membership, I will put your questions ahead of the line because I owe you and the community owes you for making all this possible. Okay, so first, Druggan has sent a super chat through, and he says, do you recommend jhana meditation first or insight meditation first? So concentration or analytic meditation first? What's your opinion?
Concentration is my
Yeah,
opinion.
same.
You need to have a mind
100%.
first before you start investigating anything else.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
hard if you're always off on something else.
Yeah. So let me be the devil's advocate and say, but couldn't you develop concentration doing analysis in a non-conceptual state? Why couldn't we go that way? Or could we?
Well, there you could, but I think you'd have to really have a strong mind when you started naturally through your karma.
Yeah.
Because from what I've heard recently, people can't read a page in a book without their mind wandering. So maybe start with that before you start, yeah, inside stuff.
Mm. So, for those who are not super familiar, Buddhism, for example, teaches two categories of meditation. The first one is basically being able to concentrate with an extremely lucid, extremely stable mind. And the other one, vipassana, is being able to use that very stable mind to analyze how something exists, sometimes using concepts, sometimes using direct non conceptual observation, or a combination of the two. And then at the end of that analysis, being able to hold whatever you've come to with concentration. So from a classical standpoint, until about, I don't know, maybe about 1950 or 1970, when they invented what's called dry vipassana in one of the Theravadan traditions, the idea was you have to have the concentration first. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to go the other way. That being said, to slightly disagree with you, but not very much. Uh, Actually, I have met some people, and I think there's a good argument for the idea that in retreat, for example, if you were to do types of meditation that are analytical, because you're in retreat and you're doing a lot of it, the concentration builds up through that kind of activity, and it can be a very skillful technique, being able to do it intensively. So more super chats coming through.
I got something else just to put on that.
No, go for it. Yeah,
The
that's why
forest
we're here.
tradition master I trained under, this is what Luangphor's words were. He said when you do concentration meditation, it's like putting mind power in a bank account. You have your mind power bank account.
Hmm.
And every time you practice concentration, you make a deposit. And when you have a really big bank account, you can spend it to do vipassana, to look at things. And the more power you've accumulated, the more you can hold the object and then do the whatever the process is that you're doing. So I mean, I think that the process of building mind power could be done that way, but I think it just convolutes it, because if you can't hold your mind on anything still, how is it going to help? You need
Yeah.
something easier, I think, to start with.
Yeah, I agree with you, and actually, that's the way I teach it. The way that I teach it, for example, I try to get people to have it. What in the Bhavanakrama system would basically be sort of the first two stages, that you can put your mind somewhere, you can hold it there for at least, like, I don't know, let's call it 60 seconds, and that's enough mental force to be able to move to another type of, like, a moving object, where you can
Hmm.
continue building concentration because of the type of object it is, i.e., body scanning, which, as you know, can make the mind extremely calm extremely quickly. Druggen says, which jhana practice is your favorite? I'll turn that over to you first, Neil.
Favorite? Do I have a favorite?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have a favorite. Do I? Doesn't that seem like a preference that I'm not supposed to have in the first place?
I think let's interpret it to mean, which one do you think is sort of best to do, maybe as a beginner or
As a
as a,
beginner,
yeah.
the one that I generally teach is the Buddho mantric meditation,
Really?
which is
Okay.
either silently or aloud reciting the word Buddho with your mind concentrated on the focal point.
Hmm.
So most people, I teach it to be the lower basin, right in your lower belly, your dantian.
Yeah.
That's the one I generally do because it's a easy one to concentrate on. And once you start to get the rhythm going, that rhythm becomes a little bit easy to fall into because it's sort of musical. People's minds concentrate easier because they're sort of drawn by that. And then I tell them to start working on pulling the words apart so the mantra slows down and the spaces in between start to stretch until you can eventually stop saying the word entirely. I find that that tends to give results fairly quickly as somebody's consistent.
Hmm.
So there's my favorite. That's the one yeah, that's the
Nice.
answer.
Excellent. Well, everyone on the channel already knows my favorite, so I'm not going to answer the question. Jazz Lynn Gray asks, how do we determine that it's time to mix things up? And I think that came in when we were talking about lineage
Well,
and
yeah, probably.
knowing when to add things in, sort of when you marinated in one lineage enough to start adding things in.
When you've been accepted into a lineage and you're actually a member of that lineage, it means that you've become trusted. And it means that you probably know something. And at that point, you have a point that you can look, a lens you can look through at other things. But you should still ask your teacher. Because if you still have a teacher, they're the older eyes, right? That can help to guide you.
Speaking for myself, I waited for my teacher to die.
Fair enough.
If you have
That
a
would
young,
be the traditional answer.
if it, I'm maybe a little bit weird in this regard. Maybe not super weird from a sort of classical standpoint, from a modern standpoint. But like, imagine those of you who haven't met a properly accomplished, realized person. Imagine if you wanted to train in music, and you just so happened to meet Mozart, and he was going to take you on as a student to train in piano and music composition. Would you have a lot of inclination to go and find, like, Beethoven or whoever, just to, like, add on another thing? No, you'd be like, while I have this opportunity, who knows when he's going to die? Who knows when he's going to get too busy? Who knows when things are going to
Mhm.
change? I'm going to take this opportunity to the maximum. And frankly, if you meet properly capable people, usually you don't have very much inclination to want to take on more, because they're already teaching you so much that, as you know, like, these systems are actually quite rich. They're already teaching you so much. You're like, man, like, I don't know where I would squeeze in more practice, more study, more, integrating some new thing I've got into what I'm doing. So that's generally how it is, like, within a proper lineage. And even the Gelug, like a classical Gelug, man, at Jamyang Center in London, for example, they have classes running all the time, and the head monk there, the Geshe there, Geshe Tenzin Namdak, if you were just doing the classes they had each week, you would be overwhelmed with the amount of information and technique and practice and things that they have on offer. So, like I generally say, at least from my standpoint, um, spend like 5 years, 10 years, like properly marinating in something, and until, like Neil said, you have a real basis of one thing to sort of look out from at everything else. Grandel, HVS once again asks, is there a guideline or ideal handling for the medicine dispenser in how they respond to a person who receives medicine and their old trauma comes up, like crying during massage therapy? So I think this is referring to the medicine analogy you used, where you're not skillful enough to apply your own stuff yet, and you need to go to the teacher to get technique.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, what else is there to say? Except you need to go to somebody who's, as my Sifu put it, has older eyes than you to be able to help you guide your way through that kind of thing. Because emotional release during physical exercise is really normal, especially deep exercise, right? It's normal to do it and have things happen in Lohan that are emotional, because you're opening and closing so much of your body that the emotionality that's stored in your tissues has to move, which usually comes out as some kind of behavior or feeling, right?
Yeah.
So I'd just say that that's the kind of thing that you talk to your teacher about, the person you're working with, that massage therapist. That's the person who's in that relationship with you right now. Because you can't navigate. I mean, it's the same for me. Like when Sifu Ken passed away, it was, yeah, I'm supposed to be the smart guy? Like, come on. Like, who put me in charge is what that felt like. You know what I mean? Because I would much rather not be dispensing medicine. I'd rather ask the guy who knows. Yeah, but I think this is the part of samsara, right? It's bittersweet. Because it's impermanent, they have to go ahead of us. And eventually it's going to be up to us schlubs to hold on to all these lineages. We're going to have to actually try to live up to what we're trying to live up to. But that's the challenge, right? If we authentically meet that, we're going to be okay. Yeah. But you can't dispense medicine until you went to medical school.
Right.
You just can't. Right? You can go down to the pharmacy and buy whatever you want, but you are doing that with your meditation practices if you don't have a teacher. And I think Percocet might be fun for a little while, but it'll end quick, right? You might want to talk to somebody who knows what's going on a little bit more.
Yeah, I hear you. Just so you know, that sort of thing does come up a lot, where even if you're not doing the physical aspects of a training system, that there's from a classical standpoint, again, to rely on my nerdiness, but also things that I've experienced and some of my students have experienced and people in my community have experienced. It's actually quite normal if you're training in meditation that all of a sudden, for example, your concentration gets a little better. And then you have like a flash of all sorts of memories you haven't thought about in years. This happened to one of my students actually a couple days ago, where he started training in concentration. He thought he was already pretty good at meditation. Turns out he hasn't ever actually contacted the object before. and he contacts the object, keeps his mind there a short time, and he goes, every decision I've ever made was based upon bullshit and delusion. And it was like, bang, he just saw he's ever cared about is himself, and every decision he's made has been based upon nonsense in a flash. And he went, holy shit. And I'm sure it was one of the most disturbing things he's experienced, because when you have that experience for the first time, where you can see what you're actually like, it's not pretty at first.
Not pretty now.
Yeah, sometimes not pretty now. So, okay.
Yeah.
Carrying on.
That's amazing.
With questions in the chat. Jaslyn Gray asks, how do we know when enough is enough of a focused practice? And how do we know not a projection of confidence? How do you know that you're not just like fooling yourself that you've done enough training in concentration or something? And how do you know when you've done enough training in concentration? I'll let you go first.
We're back to talk to a teacher.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody ahead of you. I mean, in anything I'm teaching, I like to describe martial arts classes is what I do, right? So I'm going to use that. Even when I'm teaching Lohan, I don't make people stand in lines. Everybody stands in a big circle. There's a bow because there's a formality to the class. I'm the teacher because I'm the smart guy in the room for the next hour. And that's it. And then for the next hour, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. And when at the end of it, we're just peers. It's just life. But in that context, you have to have a teacher, because otherwise you're going to move your goalposts and you're not going to know. You get lost, right? It's like being lost in an ocean. There's nowhere to land. You can't actually measure yourself, which is why in the classics there's so many signposts.
Yeah.
I think, because those books are written to let you know as you fly down the highway, you're going to see a turnoff for clairaudience, and you're going to go, that's really shiny.
Yeah.
That's super shiny. And this car can turn really fast. And then your teacher's job is to tell you you're an idiot and keep driving forward,
Yeah.
because they have that passed to them from their own experience. Because the more accomplished you get, the more I think the rest of it looks so frivolous, like what you said about your student. There's a
Yeah.
moment where you're like, oh my God, I'm an asshole. Like, I'm a terrible person. What is wrong with me? How did I
There
not
was
know this
actually,
till now?
I won't go into specifics, but there was a thing like that with Ian, who's by the way, for those who don't know, Ian Burgess. I'm going to have him on the show at some point. Is a Taoist lineage holder. He lives here in Scotland. He's quite an accomplished person in general, and is also like an encyclopedia of Taoist practice, and maybe to only a slightly lesser degree Confucian practice, and only a slightly lesser degree Buddhist practice. He's just an unbelievable mind,
Mm-hmm.
but then has also done an unbelievable amount of actual practice too. And yeah, I went to him with something like that. I'll tell you later, Neil. But I went to him with something like that, and he's like, yeah, you could do that, but you could do this thing to accomplish this thing and be able to do stuff that makes you look really cool when you do it. But if you just keep doing what I told you to do, what you'll accomplish will be so much better than that. You won't even think this was. You'll be laughing at this conversation.
Yeah. You'll be embarrassed you
So,
asked me later.
yeah, you'll
Mm-hmm.
be sort of embarrassed to even ask later. So I mean, for those of you who don't know, again, not to get too weird because we've been pretty tame up to this point, but basically all of the classics for Buddhism and Taoism say that if you train in this stuff, you will gain super normal capabilities, let's call them. That capabilities that are outside the range of what normal people can do with their mind, with their body, et cetera, et cetera. And most of those things, some of them you could use them for something useful, if they were just there. You could use them for something useful, but if you, according to all of these systems, if you divert and start placing all of your attention in developing that thing that is super normal, this radically takes you off the path of training overall. And so they're sort of seen as like side effects that aren't that important really to the overall process. And this includes things like, again, hopefully everyone won't leave and be like, what the hell? But this includes things like, psychic capabilities and recalling past lives and, being able to move people without touching them and all of these funny things you see people do in kung fu movies and such. So
Right.
no one here is making claims that we can do any of these things, but these are the sorts of things that if you're around, you hear about and see, and occasionally people do to you, and you go, what the hell is reality even about if someone can do this to me? But I digress. Let's carry on with questions. Druggan asks in a super chat, are jhanas supposed to be pleasurable? Also, what physical exercise do you recommend to pair with meditation, weight training, running, high HIIT, or martial arts?
Well, are they supposed to be pleasurable? I think pleasurable is a very loaded word, personally, in that whole thing. I think pleasurable in that means not suffering, which feels pretty good. So I mean, it's to me, at least to me, it doesn't seem like bliss in the way people think of bliss, like it's overwhelming joy.
Hmm.
More like bliss in the way that it's like everything's actually okay. Like everything's okay. There's nothing to worry or be anxious about or angry about or project towards. It's just everything's all right here in the moment. So that is a type of pleasure, 100%. And then there's body sensations that could be described as pleasurable
Yeah.
that go along with it, for sure. As far as the list of exercises, I would pick martial arts, big fat hairy surprise. But mainly because traditional martial art has a lineage, and those lineages are all tied up in Shaolin Temple, at least in the stuff that I know, right? It all goes back to Shaolin Temple. And Shaolin Temple is really famous because of the Kung Fu movies for being super fighters, but they were Buddhist monks. So I think where the disconnect really happens here is, should I do martial arts to supplement my meditation? My very first Qing Wu teacher asked me that, my first black belt test, actually. What did he ask me? How do you explain the paradox of learning violence while training something Buddhist? That was one of the questions in that exam. Yeah. And eventually, what I kind of thought to myself was, people miss the point. The Shaolin monks were trying to attain enlightenment. And they started to realize things like, if you sit in a really damn cave a really long time, arthritis sucks. Thus, maybe I shouldn't do that. I should keep my body super healthy. And they started to cross, you know, the history. You're talking to the Taoists coming from India, ramming into Chinese culture. All of it happens. And they make a series of movements that are designed to keep your body fit for meditation, which means your body's being totally opened, totally relaxed, totally closed, totally spiraled. It's going to have all of the fluids and liquids move through you. Tongzabu tongzatong. Where there's movement, there is no pain.
Mm-hmm.
So if I keep my body in motion, that pain will not enter. So martial arts is meant to propel a person's body to be able to meditate well. Running will propel a person's body to run well. What do you want? What do you want? That's the way I see it. Martial arts is about balanced body. Half of what I teach in a day is about how to walk by pulling with your front leg. Simply because nobody does. So if you've taken 10 million steps out of your back leg, pushing your front leg forward, obviously you're out of balance. So what if we correct that? Suddenly you feel very odd when somebody touches you. You have all this root and power, like you're super normal or getting some kind of miraculous ability, except you really just the person knows to use both legs at the same time. And I think it goes back to the CD stuff, like what you said about your student, the flash of insight of, wow, I've been a dick my whole life.
Yeah.
Is that really that far from remembering past lives? Really? It's projecting that further.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, from my standpoint, obviously, I agree. It's like you have this flash of seeing a huge chunk of this life with all of the patterns and so forth. And yeah, I mean, the clairvoyant experience of seeing past life would just be sort of
yeah, I think it's just more bad news. It seems like it'd be just all bad news all the way back.
Yeah, you know, that would take a lot more talking for us to sort of justify. So for the chat, again, we won't. I promise we won't go too far down the rabbit hole on that. But everyone here probably already knows how I feel about these issues. You know, yeah. I mean, basically, if you talk to high-level practitioners in any of these systems who can actually do meditation, they just tell you, yeah, of course you remember past lives. That's just something that happens. Like, it's not even a question. It's just like, yeah, and that's not even the point. This is just one of the side effects of doing this at a high level. This will happen. Of course. Yeah, of course. Can we move on and talk about the practice now? Like,
yeah. Like, wow, you went to school for 12 whole years and you can read and write? Yeah, amazing. Big surprise, everybody. Go get a career. Yeah. It's exactly that. Yeah.
So just to circle back to the question and add a little bit to what Neil said on this, part of the reason I was so excited to have Neil on, and as some of you know this from reading the sort of brief I put together before we came on, is that part of the system that Neil has in terms of Lohan practice has this full-on system for making the body really, really excellent for seated practice. And it is a Buddhist Daoist system that incorporates the wisdom of some of the geniuses of working with your body from the Shaolin Temple and from some of the Taoist lineages and so forth that found their way in, and you know, cross pollination for centuries, kind of thing. The geniuses of working with your body to make it perfect for meditation, pouring their wisdom into how do you incorporate all this and get the maximum benefit out of every aspect of what you're doing. Again, this is the power of lineage, that you get to stand on the shoulders of giants in working with yourself instead of just trying to figure it out based upon you know, the last 50 years of research into it, some of which is good, some of which is not good. You get 2,000 years of people working with themselves and living an entire lifetime doing something and having it not work out, or having it work out. And then they go, okay, we're going to go with this one now. So
Exactly.
that's the brilliance of something like Lohan that I think for me in particular, I look at this and I go, there's quite a few meditators who are asking that question of what is the physical component of this? What's the energetic component of this that I'm not able to get through the Buddhist systems without, for example, taking tantric empowerment or what have you, because it's there if you do the Buddhist tantras. And Lohan's one of these systems that has all of the physical and energetic components there without having to do empowerment, which is really rare and really special. So eventually, for those who are interested, me and Neil are talking about it at the moment, about trying to figure out how we would put this into some sort of online version, some sort of video course with resources and so forth that Neil would then be able to take you through as the doctor, as the medicine provider. We're negotiating and talking and thinking about it now. Okay, let's see. Jazz Lynn asks, how would Lohan be adapted for someone with, I guess, some kind of lung problem?
One of the aspects of Lohan, and actually kind of Sifu himself, obviously Lohan practitioner, Chinese doctor, his actual thing he was really into was longevity. He wrote a couple of books in Chinese about longevity practices. He spent a good part of his sort of semi-retirement traveling to blue zones to diagnose people in the longest lived places and traveling to the caves where the Taoist immortals used to go. And a part of what he found was that dogs breathe really fast and dogs die really young. So if a human being sitting at rest breathes 18 to 24 times a minute, what he taught me was think about your breath as you have the day you're born, you have a limited number. You have 108 billion breaths. So every time you huff and puff, they're just counting down faster. The longevity practice was to slow your breathing down below what is sort of normal. So what his instructions to me at the beginning was, you want to get below 6 breaths a minute when you're seated in meditation. You should be able to be down there. And that's actually below the level of breathing respiration rate of somebody asleep, which means that your body is going into sleep mode, which is one of the reasons there's all this repair stuff that start to take place. So if somebody has lung problems, I would tell them to start to work on longer, deeper, slower breaths into their belly. It's entirely possible to get below 6 till it's 1 or 2 or weirdly less than that, I think. Sifu Chen, when he taught me this, he took his watch off his arm and handed it to me. And he goes, okay. And he breathed in and we started. And he was breathing 1 a minute. And he was walking around in the shop. It was kind of surreal, right? Not a human being anymore, kind of surreal.
Could I just jump in on that particular point?
Yeah.
Because this is one of those points that's, I think, really important. And there's something of a lesson there that's not obvious for people, which is, for example, that to have your breath basically be at a level that is at sort of sleep level or even below ordinary sleep level means that your mind is maintaining an extremely high quality of concentration during all of your ordinary activities. Your mind has to be in a state of a highly concentrated awareness on what's occurring for your breath to remain that calm. Otherwise, the activity is going to be driving the breath up and the heart rate up and all of this, and you wouldn't be able to maintain this. So one of the things that's really cool about, let's call it, for lack of a better term, high-level Buddhist practice, high-level Taoist practice, this sort of thing, is that you're learning how to, again, as I say all the time, take your practice on the road, take your practice off the cushion and into the circus, into real life. And a huge part of what my teachers have taught me and what you find coming through the Taoist tradition, where it's mainly a layperson's tradition, by the way, is being able to take skills like that, which begin to sort of, if you're pouring it into the bottom layer, let's say, as you were saying, into the JIng layer, you're filling that bottom layer where you're making the body more like what it would be like if you had concentration. So by training the breath in this way, even if you don't have concentration yet, for example, you're building up mindfulness and introspection that you need for meditation by keeping the mind on the breath throughout your daily activities. And by making it slower, the mind becomes more concentrated because those two are tied up with each other. So, for those who aren't sort of aware of all these interconnections of things, what's so incredible about these systems that are a bit more advanced and complete, let's say, in terms of training and meditation, is they use all of the layers that make you up to push you further down the path. And that's why they're faster. And you can take a lot of those layers on the road off the cushion into real life, which again means that the progress is happening more quickly. So this is why they're faster. It's not because it's a super secret whatever. It's because they're working with more layers of you to accomplish the same thing, and because you can take it on the road. So it's not limited to 20 minutes or even 2 hours a day on your cushion. So I thought I would throw that in.
No, absolutely.
Okay, next question. We have a super chat coming in from Druggen. Does any meditation practice induce deep physical or emotional pleasure? I heard quotes about concentration being caused or amplified by joy.
How would you answer that, Jared? Joy is a loaded word.
I think, yeah, joy can be, it depends on what you mean. But, for example, there's Buddhist practices related to, for the sake of simplicity, let's say gratitude, like preciousness of a human rebirth in the Lamrim, which where you're becoming extremely thankful that you have this incredible opportunity to do all of the stuff we're talking about tonight, to put it in layman's terms. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain amount of pleasure and joy that you take in that, where you go, wow, I really do have this unbelievable chance for a short time. Because bang, it could be gone, but for right now, the teachers are here, the teaching is here, I'm healthy, my mind is relatively sharp, I'm not in abject suffering, I'm not starving to death, I'm not too stupid to figure any of this out, I really have a shot at this. How incredible, right? And there's a feeling of joy that comes with that gratitude. And you cultivate that on purpose because it drives your practice forward and makes each session more powerful, because the intent and motive you're bringing to the practice is more powerful. So I think there are practices like that. And then, of course, also if you even just gain, not even full on concentration, but if you gain some concentration, the body starts to feel quite nice. We could call that a joy of a kind for the sake of conversation. With a bit of concentration, it feels like someone took a pressure washer and just like cleaned all the little bits out of the nervous system that weren't working right, and you're like, the whole body's tingling, the whole body's warm, the whole body feels open and ready to do whatever you want it to do, and that's quite a nice thing.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. It seems to me that, like, I know with Lohan, something I hear from my students a lot is, Lohan's supposed to do all these great health things. How come I'm not seeing any of them? Well, I don't know. Maybe you're healthy. Then they go on vacation and they go, oh, so you find out what Lohan does when you stop doing it. Because now I feel like crap and my body aches in a way that I used to be normalized to. But when I'm practicing it all the time, it's not like that. I think a lot of that, it's our baseline experience that becomes the factor of what you can feel, like what kind of experiences you end up having.
Say a little more.
Everybody's living in a dualistic mindset where I have to have this to make that. So when somebody asks me things about joy and bliss, I feel like there has to be guidelines put in it. There's absolutely a joy in the opportunity we have right now in this brief moment in the race against our lifespan. But I'm also not doing what I'm doing because it makes me feel joy.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? It's a motivating factor issue.
Yes.
Because to me, that is another road sign that it's really cool to just take a right-hand turn and go, I'm going to go feel good for a while. Yeah, you can go to the medicine cabinet and take things to make feel good. But I mean, in my experience, the best meditative experience I've had, there's a joyfulness inside them. But It's because it's everything else going away. It's all the noise stopping. And the fact that I've gone inward lets me feel still and not dragged around by the world. And I find that joyous or blissful.
Yeah. Yeah. So to highlight something that Neil said there, just to cartwheel off it, as they say from time to time. One of the things that I think is really important in many of these practices is that there are so many, to use your mountain analogy from earlier, there are so many places on the mountain that you could stop and have this incredible view that you've never had before. And without teacher, without lineage, a lot of people, and you'll find these people on the internet from time to time, where for some reason they were inclined, and I'm sure you've met people like this, Neil, they were inclined right away for whatever reason to like sit down and do like 4 hours a day of practice or 8 hours a day of practice, but they had no teachers. And then stuff happens because you're doing a lot of stuff. And they think now they're really special people because they had these certain things happen to them that for us in a lineage you would go, yeah, that's just like a Tuesday, and that's just like a normal thing that happens. It means you're making progress, but it's not that important. And you can stop at any one of these beautiful views where there's bliss or there's joy, or you can control your internal state and you can make it whatever you want most of the time, and you can go, this is good enough for me, thanks. But that's not the end of the road. And this is also what lineage does for you, is it keeps all of these things that happen internally when you train the mind in a context that's appropriate to taking you all the way to the end of the path, not just to a beautiful, interesting view.
Mm.
Jazz Lynn asks, which part of the practice did you have the most resistance to training?
The difficult thing to answer. That's a difficult thing to answer. The most difficult part. I think in my own case, one of my biggest failings is, and this sounds kind of crazy, but I don't feel like I practice enough. I'm not quite as consistent enough. I'm not quite as authentic enough as I'd like to be. But I'm kind of comfortable with that moving goalpost. So I think there's certain things that are hindrances and certain things that are helpful in that way. So the most difficult thing for me has always been, can I do it every day? Can I be consistent? And because I kind of don't want to, then it becomes work. I made a deal with myself when I first started martial arts that I would train every day, and that whether or not I was allowed to skip a day had to do with whether or not I wanted to do it. So if I was like, I'm going out to train, yeah. And in high school, some girl was like, hey, you want to go out on Friday night? I was like, I want to go train. I can go on the date. But if I was like, I didn't want to go train anyway, that's great. No, now you go get beat up by Norm because you made an agreement that you have to do this. And that kind of consistency, I fail over and over. I fail, right? I'm terrible with this stuff. But I've been consistent for 4 years in that way. And I think in that way, that failing, that difficult, that hardship for me became a strength. I leveraged it for myself. You see what I mean? Because it is the hardest part of my training for me, is to be consistent. Yeah. It becomes my motivating factor.
Now that's really interesting. Something Kimball used to say to me all the time is that the greatest sign that you're gaining accomplishment is consistency.
Yeah, I agree.
He used to say, yeah. He said, a great bodhisattva, you can tell they're a great bodhisattva because they show up on time.
Yeah.
And they stand up straight. Yeah, and
exactly.
And also they leave on time, which is really interesting, right? Like they just do what's appropriate without screwing it up, which is what we struggle with. It's like we were talking about with Ian the other day, where it's like the highly accomplished practitioner seems more ordinary than ordinary because they just do what's appropriate to the circumstance and it seems normal. So this is what freaks people out, I think, about a lot of great practitioners, is that you meet them and you go, this guy seems like a totally ordinary person. Actually, he seems more ordinary than an ordinary person, but not in a bad way. He just sort of like totally understated, totally Sort of, he's just carrying on with his normal life, and for some reason, he's just able to do all the stuff he's supposed to do, and it seems to sort of, you know what I mean? There's a smoothness to it that I don't have. What is that?
Mhm.
You know?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That consistency I've noticed in my life too. It was really hard for me to be consistent in what I was practicing. And now I kind of, it's just normal. It's
Mm.
like any other thing, like making coffee in the morning. You get up, you go do the thing, you meditate, do some Lohan, and then the coffee's getting ready. And it becomes normalized eventually. I think that's where, like we were talking earlier about the four postures. That's why the four postures are so important. You have to be able to stand, walk, sit, or lie down and have something you can be working on
Yeah.
in your everyday life all of the time. Chop wood, carry water is a great opportunity to do all kinds of practice. And you get wood and water out of it, which is great.
Yeah. To throw my 2 cents in terms of difficult stuff, I think for me the most difficult bit was, ironically, sort of the first things that I was told on day one, which is, you like, sit up straight and be a gentleman. You know, these are things I was told very early on. Like, use your phone properly instead of like some weird zombie person. Like, just be normal. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
instruction. Like, be a normal, productive member of society. Don't be a prick, and stand up straight and show up on time. Like that's actually a sign of being a realized person. And what's totally insane is that these totally ordinary things, if you focus on them, they provide a huge amount of feedback on how your practice is going. Because if you're
Yeah.
going,
I
you know
felt
what, I didn't think about my neighbors when I took my garbage out and threw it away in the thing, and it made a really loud noise, and I could have done it in a way that didn't do that, which shows me that I'm not aware of the whole circumstance. I'm just aware of this part. I'm wrapped up completely in my activities, and I don't care how it turns out for everyone else around me. And
everybody
there
else
was a
could be an interdependent being, not me.
yeah, not me.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Susan. I got the impression that after the Cultural Revolution, Shaolin became an exhibition place of physical skill and discipline, but all the internal aspects were stripped out. Did something survive?
Yes. Did it survive in China? Questionable. Very questionable. The highest level martial artists I've ever met, most of them are in North America.
Hmm.
And it has to do with the Cultural Revolution. Everybody was running, right? Um,
Could you just say
in
a bit about that? Because nobody knows any of this.
That's fair.
Basically like them moving to San Francisco and Thailand and everywhere else. Nobody knows this.
Yeah, right. So in a nutshell, the Cultural Revolution was China trying to leap forward and become modern and get rid of all the stuff that's not modern because old stuff is old and that sucks. Get rid of it. So old things started being destroyed and outlawed. Temples got burned down. People in the martial arts world, people were imprisoned if they were martial artists and lineage holders and taken to re-education camps because you're utterly useless to society. All you do is create rebellions. Martial arts people are a problem, right? So what ended up happening is everybody started fleeing.
Hmm.
So Shaolin Temple itself had to disband again. Anybody that had lineages still at that time were in danger if they stayed in China. And that's the story of lots of the masters I met in the older generation than me, that it was like, hey, why are you in Canada? Cultural Revolution. Ah, everybody has the same sad story. So the diaspora went all over the planet and it's kind of not there. I suspect it's still there, but it's hidden
Hmm.
because the government was actively trying to kill it.
Yeah.
So Shaolin still exists, but it's in the hands of people in different countries. And I don't know if any of us have the whole package.
Yeah.
How could we know, right?
Yeah. 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 And for those who are interested, there are, maybe I'll put it somewhere in terms of links, but there are quite a few people like, I trained in Grandmaster Dokfai Wong's lineage of Tai Chi, for example. moved to San Francisco, and he was a full-on proper Yang style lineage holder for that system, as well as I think what is it, Choi Li Fut, right? Yeah, and so he decided he was also going to teach Westerners and not teach them halfway, but teach them full on. There are quite a few, for people who are interested, modern masters now who have lineages that were like the height of the brilliance of, let's call it 2,000 or 3,000 years of working with the human body and the human mind, exported out of China and went to Thailand or went to North America or South America or wherever because they couldn't stay. They would have been killed or imprisoned, or their families might have been put through things because they were told to stop, and if they didn't stop, they would be in big trouble, to put it mildly. Okay, carrying on with the chat. Menglish asks, in the conversation on lineage and getting alternative perspectives, how does this apply across entire schools of thought? For example, Buddhism versus Taoism versus yoga versus martial arts.
Like we said before, I would say very much the same thing. Once you have one established, you spend 10, 15 years in something. When you go to the next system and you go look at it, you have a lens you get to look through, and you're going to see tons of commonalities, and then you'll start to see the differences. So pizza. Everybody likes pizza. Pizza's always got cheese and a crust. Pizza. But every lineage flavors their pizza slightly different. So what you start to notice is that there's people who like Hawaiian pizza. That's kind of weird, but fine. And then there's the rest of, people that pay attention to the other kinds of pizza.
Civilized folk.
Civilized people. Exactly. Are we barbarians? So if that's the case, then once you start to realize that you're actually making the same dish with different flavors, in my mind, it starts to come down a lot to terminology and personal experience. So then once you have a lens, you can see what somebody else is trying to say. But it doesn't matter if somebody says to you something about emptiness from this tradition and something about emptiness from that tradition. If you don't know what emptiness means, if you have no frame of reference, it's meaningless. So spending time in and then cross-referencing against other things is, I think, a very good way to get a handle on the lineage that resonates the most with you. Because you might spend 10 years with the teacher, get established, and then meet somebody else that you're like, wow, that's doing this now. Yeah. But if I would have met you 10 years ago, I would have been too dumb to talk to you. Yeah. It wouldn't have worked, right? My karma had to be here now for this to take place.
Yeah.
Because we're always manufacturing our future that way.
That's just to highlight a historical example. For those of you who know Milarepa, is very, 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 very famous Tibetan practitioner. Is sort of famous in all the Tibetan lineages of practice. He started with, if I'm not mistaken, Dzogchen practice, and he did that for something like 7 or 8 years. And then he met his main teacher later, who taught him Mahamudra practice, which is similar but not the same. Leads to the same place, but the way that you accomplish it is different. And it was using that practice, if I'm not mistaken, through the Mahamudra lineage that finally it all detonated for him. He was able to accomplish the final goals, according to the Tibetans. It's a fairly common thing, actually, that you start in one lineage, you marinate in it completely, you get most of the moving parts under your belt in terms of understanding, at least, gain some experience, and then you meet another lineage and you go, oh, wow. This has these other things that I needed, and I didn't even know until I found this. Yeah, if you've been around for a while, that's a very common kind of experience. Also, from my standpoint, for example, I spent about 15 years in the Gelug lineage, and I'm still in the Gelug lineage. I still take my Gelug practice extremely seriously, as you know, Neil. And seeing my Gelug practice through the lens of the Taoist approach teaches me more about my Gelug understandings, because now that I have the Gelug sort of tunnel vision, having another perspective to look at it from over here and go, okay, well, here's a completely different way of thinking about all the moving parts of this. It's the same parts, but we're talking about them in a completely different conceptual structure. Now I can go, oh, oh, this piece. Well, I wonder if visualizing the guru on the top of the head has something to do with the Taoist practices of accumulating Shen on the top of the head and then bringing it down through the body. Because the Tibetans are saying through the visualization, the winds are pooling where you've put the visualization, and then you're dissolving it through the top of your head. So maybe these two things are related, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I get better at doing the Taoist version of actually just moving the Shen, pooling it, bringing it down, whatever, is this going to have an effect on my guru yoga? Probably, probably will. And when I've asked my teachers about it on the Tibetan side, they say, yeah, just don't deliberately mix them, but doing one will make you better at the other. So for what it's worth, that's my 2 cents on it. Next question in the chat. How does Lohan adapt to the 21st century culture and lifestyle? Was it as it was built and came from a specific culture? How has it transformed for the West without losing what it is? That's a great question.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the way Seeker taught me was that it's designed as a monastic system. When you have the whole system, there's a schedule you learn of what you're supposed to do when you go to retreat. And there's this 4 hour long thing that you do to do the whole system. So how does that translate to modern day? Consistency and small doses. So the Lohan form itself, the actual like moving practice, 18 moves, takes 5 minutes, which literally everyone on earth has 5 minutes. So if you can get over the struggle of finding the 5 minutes, the consistent practice of the form will start to bear the fruit, right, of those causes, which is going to be your body's going to get healthier and it's going to happen. Is it going to happen as fast as a practitioner in a monastery somewhere with their master? Nope. I'd never make that claim. No way. But if you are consistently practicing it, I know from having taught it for so many years now, people have the experiences. People have things that happen in meditation, they happen in their body, they notice their health change, they notice their ethics change. It just takes time. Sifu said it's a race against your lifespan, Neil. It'll happen. But if you practice 2 minutes a day, it's 30 years. If you practice 4 hours a day, it's probably quicker. But real life is real life. So if you can put it in your normal day that there's a part of my day dedicated to seated practice, there's a part of my day dedicated to moving practice, there's a part of my day about ethical practice and insight practice, and they all just sort of happen throughout my day. If you can get to the point where you're everyday training, let me put it in the martial arts metaphor through Lohan's lens. Lohan has a very specific way it moves in a particular cascade of muscular contractions in your body, right? That's what makes the effects happen. But because you know how to do this particular cascade through from your legs up to your hands, and you know how to do the cool I'm a Kung Fu Shaolin monk thing, it's also how you can pick things up off the counter. Also, how you can reach down to give something to the dog. So then the way I see it is this is all the drop of water at a time. So if I'm walking around doing chores in my day and I'm very mindful of what's happening and my body moves the way I've been taught it to move, I am practicing it in my modern life right now every single day. So I begin to get benefits. And they accumulate so that when you do your real morning practice, it starts to get weird. Things happen. You want to talk to somebody. So it absolutely happens. It's just a matter of time and authentic practice. That's it. But I mean, I don't have a handle either on how long it takes. I'm quite sure my teacher accomplished the goal. How long did it take him? He was 80 when he died. A long time, but he was a layperson. But I also know that he was living the last few years after having accomplished it. Therefore, it's not forever. It's 20, 30 years at best. And I can shrink that according to my own practice. So can anybody else. I'm not special.
To highlight one aspect of this question, how do you incorporate it into 21st century lifestyle? I think it's important to point out, your teacher was living in the 21st century with a family, working a
Yeah.
job, you know, and so even though he was a different ethnicity, actually, much of his life was going on in the same way as anyone else's life living in the time that we're living in now. Um, of course, there's going to be some small details of, not small details perhaps, but there are going to be some things that are different between cultures. But it's been my experience that all of the analogy that I've heard that I like a lot is all of this stuff that is the real essence of your lineage. It's like a liquid. It's like the tea in my cup. Culture is my cup. So Western culture, I can pour the tea of the practice and the tea of all of the accomplishment into this vessel, and it's going to be a different shape, but the tea is the same tea. And to get into all of the nitty gritties of, well, exactly what is the shape and how is it different is actually quite difficult to pin down. But just by way of example, so my primary teacher was a Western lay person. He worked on Wall Street for a period of time. He ran several businesses. He had a son. He was married. Very basically conventional kind of life. But his Okinawan teacher groomed him to become the head of that lineage, although he, in the end, decided he didn't want to do that. He wanted to go and sort of not be a martial arts teacher. And so he was basically recognized in that lineage as an accomplished practitioner. And then he encountered the Gelug tradition, and he trained in Tantra in the Gelug tradition. And by the end of his life, he had been invited on one occasion to meet with the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama wanted a book that he was writing to be translated into Tibetan to be taught in the Tibetan monasteries. And the Ganden Trippa, who's the actual head of the Gelug, the Dalai Lama is extremely important, but the actual head of the Gelug lineage is called the Ganden Trippa, invited him to come and do what are called completion stage practices, the highest part of highest yoga tantra, privately with him at the monastery, one of the monasteries in India. So just by implication, let's not say maybe he didn't even have great accomplishment, but he had enough accomplishment that some of the greatest living lamas and practitioners of the Gelug lineage wanted him to come and complete his training with them, right? So by implication, what this means is that you, with a family, with responsibilities, running businesses, or whatever it is you have to do to make a living, can do this same thing if you put in the time and effort and figure out how it is as a person living in the real world that you do these practices and gain accomplishment. Now, he also did some serious retreats, during the time I knew him, when he had to complete certain tantric requirements, he spent 6 months in retreat at one time. It was very difficult. 16 hours a day, 4 sessions, 4 hours each, full on. But prior to that, leading up to that, he, in the entire time I knew him, he didn't do those kinds of retreats. He did his practice in the midst of real life. So once in his life, as far as I know, he did that kind of retreat, and the rest of the time, he gained small systematic accomplishments through bringing more and more into real life, the way we've been talking about this whole time. So I think it's really important to say that I know for sure, based upon practitioners like Neil, my own experience, my other, like Taoist practitioner, Ian Burgess, and other people I've met, and my own teachers, that you can pour the tea into this vessel, into the Western vessel, and you can still drink it. It's not the same shape, but you can definitely still drink it, and it's the same tea, according to those who are holding it in a different vessel. Does your martial art have grappling, takedowns? How is it compatible with ahimsa and good karma? Sort of related to the nonviolence question earlier.
Yeah, paradox. So if we look at it from a Lohan boxing point of view, right, just that Sheldon Lohan system. Lohan is a cultivation system first that happens to have a martial arts aspect. The martial arts aspect of it is, we'll say, complete from the Chinese point of view, which means it has ti da na shui. It has kicking, hitting, like punching. Hui means throwing people, and na means grappling or seizing things. It means like stand-up grappling. It's not like Brazilian jiu-jitsu ground rolly stuff. So from a martial perspective, does it include all the ranges of combat and the ability to defend itself? Yes. It absolutely does. When you learn that it's about lensing it, it's about being able to take each of the 18 moves and doing what I call the 8 layers of application. I have to be able to see each one of those 4 types of kicking, hitting, throwing, or grasping in every movement. And I have to be able to see at least 3 or 4 layers underneath each one. What if it's his right hand? What if it's his left hand? What if it's a leg? What if he's on my left or my right? What if he grabs me? How does it change this exact same movement into something else? Now, where Lohan looks at this lensing, where the Lohan part of it comes in, I'll tell you, because this is exactly what my experience was. Sifu asked me about if I was ready to do the fighting stuff. I was like 25. I'm like, yes, go on, finally. And he said, show me the applications you see. So I'm going through the Lohan form and I'm like, this is one of these and this is one of those. And the only words he said that whole day was, yes, but be more Buddhist. Yes, but be more Buddhist. This is where you break this arm. Well, yes, but you're not going to, are you? And what he ended up putting over the lens was the idea of Lohan is to de-escalate entirely. It's a pinnacle of its like martial arts is what he called crushing emptiness. And crushing emptiness is this weird, wow, okay, yeah, I don't know how to explain this weird force that you can generate by the way it moves that makes everything sort of cycle downwards towards the earth in front of you. So what happens when somebody touches you, when he would touch me with this, is I just crumple underneath him. I just fall to the ground. And the idea, of course, is some kind of violence thing happens, you do your 18 Lohan, and the guy's sitting down, and you have a little chat about why you shouldn't be a dickhead. Because obviously, right? So the idea is that can it take care of itself? Yes, but it's trying for the literal highest ideal. Martial artists all deal with a paradox of the fact, I'm going to just say this. I think we're all mentally ill, and we're all trying to treat our mental illness through our martial arts training. We all have a predisposition towards violence, obviously. So there's a problem in the first place. So we go to a martial arts school because we have this problem with violence. I really like it, or I really hate it. And some guy, we pay him to beat us up long enough until we start to see through it. We're treating our own mental illness with it, right? But then there's this other illness that takes place out of your ego, which is I'm tougher than you. And when people are peers in martial arts and they actually butt heads with their egos, they get hurt. The highest level of a martial artist is the guy who's walking out to get his groceries, gets attacked by the ninja. And when the cops arrive, the ninja's on the ground going, yeah, I really shouldn't have done that, but uninjured, not destroyed, not broken into pieces that he'll never put back together. So the idea of the Lohan boxing is to be able to take care of yourself without doing damage, which you can imagine is incredibly hard. I can also vouch that I knew a little 120-pound Chinese man that could take me and make me sit on the ground anytime he wanted to. So we could have a talk about why my Kung Fu was super cool and great, except sit down and be more Buddhist.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes some sense.
To throw a little bit of my one of my teachers' wisdom in there as well. My main teacher was a very accomplished Okinawan martial arts practitioner, and was a tournament fighter in that art. And his teacher, who was recognized as being like a very accomplished Zen practitioner, was 2-time All Japan full contact champion. And what he said was a couple of things I thought were kind of interesting. To actually become, well, one of his teachers used to say, I can tame a tiger. I can't do anything with a jellyfish. Like, I can take someone who really wants to actually like shred someone alive and kill them and turn them into a completely harmless human being. But somebody that doesn't have the force of mind to do anything serious, I can't help that person. Because it actually takes a lot of force, because it's not natural to want to take another person apart completely. And so that type of person already has a lot of force of mind, which you can direct and turn into a harmless person. but the person whose mind is just flippy flopping all over the place, it's hard to help that person. So he used to say that a lot, and then he used to also say, to actually choose to be nonviolent, you have to have the choice to be violent.
Exactly what I was going to say.
If
Yeah.
you walk away because you're scared, that's not ahimsa. That's cowardice. That's fear. And he used to go out, he said, with his teacher, and they would go out to bars, and there were yakuza and stuff at the bars. And they would go there because they wanted, as young guys, they would go there because they knew there would be fights and stuff, and they could make sure their stuff worked. And he said that even the yakuza guys and stuff, sometimes they didn't know who his teacher was, but they said, just sort of like you said, but like maybe perhaps just sort of one layer down. They said just because how he would sit, there was something about him that is sort of like staring at a lion who's completely calm, you know? And you go, that's not
Yeah.
a kitty cat.
Yeah, that's not cool. Why are you not nervous in the
Yeah,
Yakuza
yeah.
room? Yeah.
Yeah, why are you not scared? Why are you not? And so nobody would
Mhm.
mess with him, but they would mess with everybody else because their minds weren't stable. And so
Exactly.
part of being
Exactly.
ahimsa is that your demeanor subdues other people. I'm not a particularly capable practitioner. My teachers are like, I'm like, sometimes, they say in Hinduism sometimes, I think it's quite charming. They go like, I'm a little fingernail of my teacher, kind of itching you guys. He was a whole body.
Whole person there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm like a little fingernail compared to what he was capable of. And some of you think that I'm kind of capable as a person, even though I look at my capability and I go, oh, compared to my teachers, man, I'm like nothing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyways, yeah, so to be harmless, you have to actually be capable of harm. Otherwise, you're not making a choice, you're just following your predispositions. Hmm.
I
That's
couldn't
my
agree
two
more.
cents.
That's the paradox of violence, I think, in martial arts. Because as soon as you lose your fear of violence, it no longer has power over you.
Hmm.
So you don't need to choose it.
So Lohan could be the traditional pizza recipe that has been adjusted over the world by many a pizzeria.
Indeed, it could be. It could be. If the story is true, right? If it's really what the legend is, then it's really, really old. And it left the temple during the first destruction and
Oh
made its
wow, I
way
didn't know that.
that's the story Sifu told me. Yeah. Is that this system left the temple at the first destruction. And some of the people who knew it ended up taking off to Tibet because there was a whole hunt down the Buddhist monks thing going on, right?
Hmm.
And it ended up in a monastery there. And because Tibet's isolated in a museum for the next few hundred years, it just was there. The lineage ends up in Tibet. I don't know the name of the monastery, sadly. But sometime when my Sifu was about 20 years old in Guangdong, in Canton, a Tibetan Lama was traveling, had a few followers with him, going to do some study and debate with other Buddhists in the area. And he fell sick. So my Sifu's family is doctors, like his family tradition is medicine. So he was already like finishing his doctor training under his dad and has been working at the clinic. And on his way home, he sees a sick Buddhist monk. So naturally, being a solid guy, he's like, why don't you come back to the doctor's office I have? So he ends up treating this monk. And there's a lot to that story, maybe another time. But he ends up
Fair
treating
enough.
this monk, and the monk gets better. So what happens is that the monk heals up, and he's like, "Hey, I have traveling money. Let me pay you. You're a doctor. I like stay at your house." And Sifu goes, "No, no, no. I'm Buddhist. Like we're solid. Don't worry about it." So the monk took it as an omen. I'm supposed to stay here. And Sifu, he tells Sifu that, and Sifu's like, "Well, I'm supposed to train with you then. Like that's how this operates. If that's the case." So the monk moved into a temple, and that Sifu Chen became Sifu Chen by going and studying with him for 30 years until the monk passed on. And then the Jingmu Martial Arts Association in Guangzhou, Sifu Chen was one of the founding members of it, brought Lohan to it. That's the
Hmm.
only other place that there should be Lohan people, theoretically, if there's any of his other old students there. Because he was the youngest of the students, too, depending on who's still around. So then, of course, his daughter marries a Canadian person, moves literally right into my city, and I end up meeting him and spending the rest of his life.
Hmm. Excellent, excellent. Carrying on with the chat, let's see. Ah, yes. Inch wide, mile deep. Solid Hog says the Buddha supposedly said instead of digging 10 wells 10 feet deep, dig one well 100 feet, and you have a higher chance of finding water. Just a comment. Jazz Lynn asks, what part of the day is wrathful compassion practice?
I'm going to answer the first one.
Or are you?
The
Go
man
for
who
it.
chases two rabbits catches none.
Hmm.
So you catch one rabbit, then the second one. That's kind of what we're talking about all the time.
Man who sits on two horses doesn't go well.
Doesn't go well.
Yeah, no, the
Exactly.
Tibetans, they say when they talk about trying to do two lineages at once, especially in the beginning, they say it's like trying to sit on two horses at the same time.
Yeah.
It's,
Good luck. Yeah. It
if you're
might
from
work.
the circus, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
wrathful compassion. Just to jump in on wrathful compassion. So, wrathful compassion is an interesting subject. I mean, basically, what it means is that your teacher isn't actually getting angry with you, but because, for example, your teacher really wants you to get something, and you're kind of a thick head dum dum, they have to do something strong, powerful, forceful to get you to get it. And the example that's often used is like a mother who sees her child about to reach their hand, and like, actually, I think reaching your hand into fire is not a good example because some moms will just be like, he'll figure it out. But you know, maybe sticking a fork into a light socket, right? This is like a really parent's worst nightmare kind of situation. You see your kid with a bent fork about to stick it in a light socket, and you go, oh wow. And so you have a choice. Are you going to sort of go, Johnny, don't do that? Or are you going to run over there and slap their hand and go, don't do that, or you're going to be in big trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't make the impression strong and the consequence real, there's a chance that when you're not looking, they're going to go right back to it, like I did when I was a kid, and stick a fork in a light socket twice back to back, to my mother's horror. Yeah.
Didn't get the lesson
That
the first time. Had to
No,
double
that's who
check.
you're
Yeah.
talking to, by the way. I was like the double slow dum dum guy. Anyways, yeah, why don't you chip in, Neil? What do you have to say about
I mean, I
wrathful?
agree with everything you're saying.
Hmm.
Wrathful compassion means that it's for the betterment of everyone involved in the end, no matter what it looks like on the outside. It's about intention. A good teacher can act wrathful without meaning to be harmful. They're just trying to shake you. I mean, in the martial arts world, a lot of the really good lessons I've had would not be considered anything but wrathful. You know what I mean? Because a
Yeah.
point had to be made. Like, for instance, you're not as good as you think you are, Neil. And so somebody would put me in my place. But then I'm different now. And I'm further along the path because I know the goalposts are different. I know what the rules are. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think that really good teachers, they're dispensing medicine per patient. Some people need some of that. Some people don't.
Yeah, I was the one, like my main teacher. I think there was 4 different occasions he kicked me out of class and said, "Don't come back here until we've had a conversation, and maybe I'll decide you don't ever come back." And I was like,
Well,
"Shit." I fucked it. I totally fucked it.
yeah,
And he meant it. There was a good chance he was not letting me come back. He was not going to let me keep training with him because of something I had done.
yeah.
And he trained with a hardcore Okinawan Zen teacher, and it was full on. It was sort of like, you know, he said that his teacher, for example, it was interesting that when they would spar, there would be sort of the playful part, and then as soon as his teacher was like, "Okay, it's done now," there was
Mhm.
nothing he could do. And it's the same way. I've said this on many occasions. like with my experience with my teachers is like they're really accomplished practitioners. That quite often they're like an encyclopedia of stuff and techniques and ways of working with you. They're like a pharmacopoeia. They're a whole pharmacy, and
Mhm.
it used to drive me nuts because I'm a relatively intelligent person, but there was absolutely nothing I could keep up with my teacher on any subject whatsoever. And I think he did that on, he could have just not done that, but he did it on purpose, I think, to go, look, you need to calm down and
Yeah,
stop being so arrogant about being smart.
yeah,
Like you can't even keep up with me and this isn't my subject.
yeah. I'm just like a guy. Like,
Yeah.
what's so special about you? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
If I'm an ordinary person, then what are you doing here? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so I think there's this thing good teachers do where they're actually there to confront the worst parts of you. And so one of the lessons I got fairly early on was, if things are going really well between your teacher and there's never moments of tension or conflict, they're not actually challenging you to confront the bullshit that you're doing all the time
Mhm.
because you're screwed up. You have delusions. You're doing it backwards. You're hurting yourself, you're hurting other people, and that has real consequences. And your teacher is meant to be like, did you notice this thing about yourself that's really dark and horrible? And that's uncomfortable as hell, you know? And some of that will come out in a forceful way if you don't get it the softer way, you know?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
they're really trying to help you.
you see the gentle version first, and eventually it's the stick. Yeah, it's totally
Right.
true.
If you don't take it the first two times.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I tried to tell you.
Yeah, I tried to tell you, but now I'm gonna hit you with a stick. Yeah, exactly.
John Jedi asks, how does Lohan compare to the Taoist metaphor of the water wheel?
Very much the same. It just uses different language. Poetry is different in each lineage, but they talk about the same kinds of processes. So the way Sifu Chen described this to me was, if you think about the channels, the meridians, as actual waterways, they're all rivers. Then when I'm moving and I'm doing my Lohan, what I'm actually doing is opening and closing locks on the rivers. So therefore, if I close one of the rivers off with the dam, pressure will build. And when I open that pressure will wash through the system. So if you look at the metaphor of the water wheel, it's like the same kind of talk where and it's the same thing. You end up doing the microcosmic orbit, just like you do in the Taoist practices. It's different language. That's where the lineages all seem to be coexisting in the same space because everybody's human. We're all a bunch of monkeys who somehow became self-aware, and we're dealing with the same gross material all the time. So therefore, no one's going to discover something that you can't do if you're human. Because we're all human, there's going to be all these different descriptors of the same experiences and all these ways to get to them, and all of these effects and transmutations that are going to happen out of it. So hopefully, no matter which lens you use, you end up with the right information. So Lohan is doing the same transformative process that you would see in Taoist, like microcosmic orbit type stuff, as a prime example, right? The Lohan system uses the muscle tendon change and the bone marrow washing. Same way Taoist systems, you see what I mean? They're very much parallel, different language about the same things.
Hmm. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. I would, just sort of piggyback on that and say also that in at least what I know of, and I'm not an expert, but at least what I know of the Buddhist tantras, they have similar practices that where you're using, for example, the lower basin, storing energy there, moving it in various ways that create certain kinds of, uh, without saying too much, sort of certain kinds of mental and physical effects that are very beneficial for your practice. And usually, how to say, the reason those things are kept private or quiet, let's say, is because if you can actually do them, there's the potential you can screw yourself up with them because they're powerful techniques. And so you need a lot of preparation for your character and preparation for your body and so forth to get into those kinds of practices. I don't know if it's the same in Lohan, but from a Taoist perspective and from a Buddhist tantric perspective, for example, if you start working with the lower basin and storing a bunch of energy, you're just making yourself more of what you already are. One of my teachers said it's like plugging in the lights on a Christmas tree for the first time. If it's covered in blood and guts and skulls and horrible stuff, like, you're in for quite a show. But if it's covered in beautiful ornaments and you've already set it up really nicely, and this is your character we're talking about, your character is already carved and you've done a lot of work and you have all the pieces in place, and then you plug it in. Oh,
Yeah, and you
now
have to
there's
look
more
at
of
it.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's this beautiful thing that you've added even more force and power to in terms of your practice. So um, there is, at least from what I've seen, it's interesting to hear that the Lohan has basically the same idea, or unless they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sort of where those practices start to come in, where you're working with the lower basin and powering things up. Usually, it's a good idea to have done a lot of other work on yourself first that makes your whatever it is you're powering up virtuous instead of non-virtuous. You don't want to be the Darth Vader. You want to be the the Luke Skywalker, or the what's her name, and the new one.
The new one? I don't know.
The
I
new
always go
Star
with
Wars.
Yoda.
Yeah, you got to go with the old school. Is there more you want to say on that, Neil?
No, I think they're all discussing the same things in different languages, different cultural backgrounds. The Lohan is very much, from my experience, the whole process. It's taking care of all the aspects of the same process that it seems every system seems to be trying to do.
All right, carrying on in the chat. Let's see. Okay, Druggen says in a super chat, do you gain good karma knowing and rejoicing in the fact that you spared all those people today? In other words, that you didn't choose violence. I think that's related to the previous ahimsa question.
Well, why wouldn't you? It's a good thing to not be an idiot. You should definitely rejoice in that. 100%. I mean, the more razor sharp you put a point on that, the more you can get into what it means. Somebody who doesn't have the fear of violence means they have the ability to do violence, which means they have the ability to not do violence. But in reality, if you go out in public, you are walking around with a superpower of some sort, the same way someone who walks around armed does. And somebody who walks around armed needs to have their character together. It's that simple, because you start writing checks with your mouth that your body's going to have to cash afterwards, otherwise. And that's a big problem. So, should you rejoice in your peacefulness? Yes, and especially if it's a new thing. If it's a new experience, really rejoice in the fact that you're not the dickhead you used to be. It's like your story earlier, going out to the bar in Japan to see if any Yakuza guys wanted to fight. That is not an unusual story of a certain generation of martial artists being like, so where do the Hells Angels hang out? Did you know that if you send a Hells Angels a glass of milk, you get to practice Kung Fu? Because it's true. That's true. But the person I was when that was funny to me is a different person than I am now. Did I learn a lot from it? Yeah, really fast. But it had to be that moment in time that I rejoiced that it's over. And I got the lesson I needed from it and it changed who I was. Because at the time, that was all about, I'm afraid I don't know martial arts. So how can I prove it to myself? What's the scariest monster in the world? I'm looking for the Holy Grail, so it's in the scariest place. Okay, I'm really scared of this kind of person. So you run into the tiger and see what happens. And once you've actually done that, you're not afraid of tigers anymore. But then you can rejoice in the fact that you don't have to live your life in this constant state of fear and aggression and labeling of other people and having really strong opinions that just cause problems. You can kind of go along to get along when it means more to you than it did before.
Hmm. Could I just ask Neil outside of the chat, because I've heard people say this before, and uh, I've heard more than one martial artist who's like a career martial artist like yourself say, if if you actually have skill, for example, and you've put yourself in circumstances in the past where you've applied those skills and actually done violence, it makes you less inclined to want to do it in the future because there's a weight to it. That having done it, you look at it and you go, you know what? Actually, that wasn't glorious in the way that I was hoping, or didn't give me what I thought, etc. So I was just wondering if maybe that was your experience as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The person I was that made me get into trouble was a kid that was scared and traumatized and afraid of violence and afraid of bullies. So he went hunting the biggest bullies he could find. The guys in the bar that I used to bounce in. Then it started to be, well, they're not tough. They're normal people. Let's go to biker bars. They're tough guys, right? And it was because I was trying to get over my own fear. I was putting myself through a crucible of fear. But the problem is if you get into a position like that, you have to hurt somebody. Like, not just swat a guy. And then afterwards, yeah, you have your little rush of the moment of the tiger standing over the deer. And then you're human again and have to deal with it. And that is a tragedy.
Hmm.
So I realized that eventually what I was doing was feeding my ego to overcome my fear. So I couldn't beat my fear. I had to let it go. Just like I can't beat my ego, I have to let it go. I have to unwind it. I don't overcome it. I unwind what's going on. By trying to overcome, I became a person who was the bully that I had when I was a kid. I know that's the process. Yeah, kind of Darth Vadered a little while. I dabbled in a little Vader. And I think it's important in a way. The way you say wait. Here's if somebody wants to come and learn martial arts, what they have is an assumption in their head of what that means. And it's wrong because they don't do martial arts. So it's wrong in some way or another. And the way that I see understanding what the paradox of peace and violence is if you understand what an extreme is, you start to understand what the other is. And you can find the middle. We're supposed to be finding a middle path. How do you know if you don't see the ends? How do you find the middle of something?
You
So as a
grab it by
martial
the
artist,
ends.
what I had to do was I had to find where violence was and where the darkness was, because I could turn around and go, okay, well, what's a 180 from here?
Hmm.
Because that's where I want to go. I went down a rabbit hole I shouldn't have, and I realized it. I had a I had a teacher in my young life who empowered that side of me until I met Sifu Chen. Why he's Yoda to me. He saved my soul.
Hmm.
So what I feel is necessary is to see the extremes of things. You need to see what it is to carry a karmic weight so that you know you don't want to carry one.
Hmm.
You can't put something down you've never picked up.
Hmm.
It's the way it is. So the more we self introspect, I think you start to realize you're carrying tons of shit. And you don't really want to pick up more. You'd
Hmm.
really rather let go of it. But
Yeah.
everybody goes through their evolution of their monkey mind and body taking over and running the show while they're kids. I mean, not to get too esoteric about it, but part of the tragedy of samsara is that you can't remember. If only you could remember last time how you were an idiot, you'd be less of one this time. But the memory wipe really makes the game hard. The machine's difficult to navigate.
Hmm.
So if I have this short lifespan right now of this human life, I can look at my own patterns and go, what kind of person do I want to be? Who are my heroes? And when I was a kid, heroes were strong superhero people. And now my heroes are old Asian men who used to wear robes and pajamas and sat around a lot. So I think that it's a part of everybody's evolution to have to deal with the fact that all of us have delusions and attachments, and we've done things in our past we regret. And that thing has to be the driving force for you to look towards the other direction, to find how to let things go. Do your penance in your own mind as you change your character.
Hmm. Yeah, I heard someone say recently that we've all committed at least, if you've lived, Probably. We've all committed at least one unforgivable sin. And the great paradox of spiritual practice at some stage of the practice is that you have to forgive yourself for the unforgivable and put down that weight so that you can carry on carving your character in the opposite direction from what you now know was completely wrong. So yeah, I find that very relatable. James asks, while Lohan is considered a safe practice, is there anyone it's not suitable for certain aspects, if not the system as a whole?
I don't think it would be considered unsuitable for anyone because everybody enters at the beginning. And if you enter at the beginning, then it starts to do the process to you. Some people get less angry. Some people get more confident. Some people, you know what I mean? It's going to change everybody slightly differently according to their things that are out of balance. So is there a point where that might become an issue if there's some kind of psychosis or Qigong sickness? Yeah. Why you need a lineage. Because you need somebody who's been instructed or gone through it with a teacher to be able to help navigate. Because like we said earlier, it's about medicines. So is there certain medicines for certain people? Only if the teacher has them. If I was teaching somebody and they were in a state that I don't have a medicine for them, I would be doing my best for them to find a new teacher. I would help them. Somebody who's smarter than me needs to do this. It's above my pay grade.
Yeah, to jump in there, I quite often say, for example, these sorts of systems are what we would call in the West wellness psychology. It's if you are already in the range of normal for what's going on with you, relatively speaking, because we're all, we all have our own unique brand of weirdo. But if you're within the range of normal for being a weirdo, these systems can take you to actually much greater capability, much greater wellness, much greater sort of mental well-being. And that's true even from a cognitive psychological standpoint. It's not just a religious statement of some kind. However, if you have something else going on that puts you outside the range of normal stuff, these systems, generally speaking, in the short term and maybe even the medium term, aren't very good at helping with those things. So go to your therapist, go to your doctor, get medications that bring you back into that range of normal. And then I've seen, I don't know about you, Neil, but I've seen not over a short time, but over a long time, 10 years, 20 years of practice, people make some progress against certain kinds of conditions and things they have, even mental conditions. Maybe not full recovery, but like a friend of mine has bipolar, for example, went from taking a handful of pills every day to taking like a few half pills of things a day because his mind got more stable. Or as you know, we have a common friend who's trained in a lot of this stuff who was told by a doctor, you're so autistic that all you'll ever be able to do is stock shelves in the back of a grocery store. And now he runs $1 million company and has done work for the UN and has a family and teaches people with autism how to do meditation. So training in this stuff can help you with things, but probably not like in 6 months. It's probably 5, 10, 15 years of work. So between here and there, do all the conventional stuff that keeps you in a more normal range. Otherwise, you're going to have great difficulty doing this stuff in the first place. And some of it, if you're predisposed to things like, schizophrenia, for example, might even make it worse. Because turning your mind inwards and getting really involved with what your mind is doing may even make you more inclined to the type of psychosis you're inclined towards. And I've seen at least one case like that. So it's important to stick with your conventional sort of doctor stuff. Okay, so continuing the lightning round. Jaslyn asks, how do you deal with the mind holding back from that intentional practice of doing wrathful compassion? Wrathful compassion is really a practice for people that have compassion. So compassion, according to Buddhism, is amongst, let's say, the 3 or 4 rarest minds in the universe. None of us have this mental state called compassion that's being referred to in Buddhism. Sometimes we have goodwill for people. Sometimes we want things to go well for people. Sometimes we have empathy. Sometimes we don't want people to suffer. But what we're talking about with compassion in a Buddhist context, at least, is it is a universal, overwhelmingly powerful sense that you have taken personal responsibility to remove the suffering and causes of suffering for every single sentient being that exists, down to fleas and mites living on people's heads. And this desire is so powerful. You can read, there's a book by a monk called Palden Gyatso, Fire Under the Snow. He was captured by the Chinese when they invaded Tibet, and he was tortured daily in horrific ways that I'm not going to mention on this stream. And when he escaped after 20 years of having boiling oil thrown on him and being tortured and mutilated and all of this stuff, the Dalai Lama asked him if he was afraid at any time during his time there. And he said, I was afraid I might lose my compassion for the people torturing me. This is how powerful compassion is. So that what we have from day to day isn't compassion by a Buddhist standard of psychology. So we as normal people can't do that kind of practice. You need to have the compassion first. If you'd like to chip in, Neil, please do.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's a type of compassion that is not mundane, I guess. It's not mundane. Not every teacher. I've heard that used as an excuse for bad behavior. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And it can't be.
Yeah. Lewis asks, what's an unforgivable sin? I will circle back in an open Q&A and answer that one for you, Lewis. But basically, I would just say it's something that you feel has been, that you've done, that you couldn't forgive yourself for doing. And maybe even that you think that if you told other people about it, that no one could ever forgive you for having done that thing, right? That you think you deserve suffering and rejection because of this thing you have done. You know? And it's a powerful psychological force. And one thing you have to do in your practice at some point is look at all these terrible things you've done and gone, yep, that was wrong. Not going to do that again. And set it down, you know? What do you think, Neil? How do you use the darkness and your sort of the worst parts of yourself to do good?
Okay, so from the martial arts point of view, if I learn a whole bunch of violence, I could be the guy that stops someone else from getting hurt. I could be the guy who has heightened senses and is going to know something bad's going to happen a little before everyone else. I could be that guy. And the reason I'm that guy is because I went and did bad things where it mattered if your head was, on a swivel or not, or you're going to get it kicked off. So by going through the trials and tribulations I've had to go through with my own dark night of the soul, what I came out on the other side with is, as you put, Jared, a toolkit that's very useful. For example, surgeons do wonderful work, and they do the most heinous, horrifying thing in the world at the same time. So if you're cool with cutting people open for the right reasons, there is a place, right? There's a place for that. There's definitely a place for that. But it's about the personality and the character traits, the virtuous aspects of a person that are going to temper what those skills are. Because a poison dragon is someone with tons of martial ability and no ethics, which is why they're not supposed to get taught in the first place. They shouldn't have ever learned it. I mean, somebody made a mistake. So I think that's what it comes down to. If a dark time in your life or a trauma in your life has created a part of you that's like violent or lashing out or depressive, is there a way to twist it into helping everyone around you? Is there a way to make it a power for you? If I've been traumatized and injured in my life, when I see someone else injured, I can understand where they sit. That's different than having an intellectual understanding of, oh, it must suck to live under a bridge and be homeless. Terrible, terrible. I feel terrible for you. But if you've been under a bridge and homeless, you're there. You've tasted the same apple they have. That makes sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense to me. I think that's a very good answer. And I could add some things on, but I would actually like to give you the final word of the day. So, so I think to wrap us up, the only thing I would sort of say to the chat and anyone who finds this later is that part of the effort in doing this overall and having this podcast and so forth is to find people like Neil and to find practitioners who are living in the real world doing this, who are holding lineages and trying to do the full richness of these kinds of practices in the midst of real life, and who at least seem to be making some progress with these kinds of practices, right? Because I think it's really important. It's really important for people to realize that from direct experience, through seeing other practitioners, that yes, you too can do this if you put in the time and effort, and that is extremely important. And then the other thing is, I'm really keen, in particular with Neil's work and the lineage that he's carrying with Shaolin. For those who are interested, if you didn't hear the earlier part of the stream, one of the things that I aspire to do with him, help him do whatever, however it ends up happening, whatever, is to put together some remote kind of resource where all of this incredible richness and resource related to training the body, training the energy system, training the mind, found in this particular system, which is very rare to find with a Buddhist flavor, to find that full thing without having to have tantric empowerment, for example, very difficult. And so I think this is one of those elements of Buddhist practice that is so needed. What do you do with your body? What do you do with your energy system to make it so that you're filling all of the layers in your practice and not just brute forcing it with your mind? And the geniuses of several thousand years poured every ounce of their being into creating a system that would make this better and easier for us. And thankfully, Neil has inherited that system, carried it on, and his teachers have said, okay, you know enough that you can carry this on without me having to tell you this stuff anymore. So now we can get it from Neil. So with a bit of luck, we'll get something going where those who are interested can start training in this remotely. And then Neil will be able to teach sort of mentorship one-on-ones remotely, and then maybe even do workshops, because this is what he'd like to sort of move into as he gets into the mature years and twilight years of his life, is carrying this system on and training people in meditation. And I'd like to support him in that. And I hope whoever sees this around will also go, at least one of you will go, this is it. I want to take this lineage on. And hopefully we can carry it on for at least one more generation. That's why we're here.
We can hope for.
That's what we can hope for. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. Neil, thank you so much for being here and inspiring me and inspiring these people. And my goodness, what an event. I'm glad things went relatively well. And as I like to say, thank you all for coming. Hope to see you again soon. Try not to die before I do. Cheers.
Cheers.